Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Liana Friedenbach and Felipe Café. At the end of 2003, teenagers Liana Friedenbach and Felipe Café planned a hiking trip to spend time together in nature. They were a young couple in love, having dated for several months while attending the same school. However, their parents disapproved of their relationship, forbidding them from going on dates or engaging in such adventures. Determined to stay together, they came up with a plan to mislead their families. Felipe told his family he was going hiking with friends, while Liana claimed she would be spending the weekend with church friends in Ilhabela. Their parents believed these stories. The plan seemed flawless, offering them the chance to spend several days alone together. They chose the countryside of Embu-Guaçu, located in the greater São Paulo region of Brazil, as their retreat. What was meant to be a peaceful and romantic getaway tragically took a horrific turn when they crossed paths with a group of dangerous individuals. Although deceiving their parents was not easy, Liana and Felipe succeeded and were overjoyed to finally be together in a place free from interference. Their relationship had always faced resistance from their families, limiting their time together to brief interactions at school. The opposition was likely due to their ages. Liana was 16, while Felipe was 19 at the time. They began their trip on October 31, 2003. The journey was long and arduous, but Liana and Felipe were determined to overcome every obstacle. With limited financial resources, they relied on free travel privileges and took public transportation to reach São Paulo. Starting early in the morning to avoid suspicion, they arrived at the São Paulo bus station by 5 a.m. on October 31 and waited for their next bus. By around 9 a.m., they reached Embu-Guaçu, where they transferred to another bus heading towards Santa Rita, a small rural village near an abandoned site they planned to explore. From there, they made the final stretch on foot to reach their destination. This abandoned location was isolated and deserted, making it an ideal retreat for them. Believing it to be the perfect spot to relax, they walked approximately 4.5 kilometers to reach the site and set up a tent under the shelter of a dilapidated, abandoned structure. Full of excitement for their week-long getaway in this tranquil hideaway, they savored every moment together. However, the area was not as private as they had hoped. During their journey, they traveled through a forest community inhabited by impoverished locals. Liana's beauty, their neat and stylish appearance, and the bags they carried made them stand out. The locals assumed they were wealthy visitors coming to enjoy some leisure time in the forest. Nearby, a group of men was fishing. Among them were Paulo Cesar da Silva Marques, nicknamed Pernambuco, and Roberto Aparecido Alves Cardoso, nicknamed Champagna. Both were members of a gang led by Champagna. While they were fishing, they saw Liana and Felipe setting up camp in the middle of the wilderness. Fueled by sinister intentions, they began devising a horrific plan. Later that afternoon, Pernambuco and Champagna launched an attack on Liana and Felipe. Before making their move, they observed the couple closely to ensure they were alone and unarmed. Once assured, they launched their assault. Initially, they assumed that Liana and Felipe were wealthy and possessed valuables worth stealing. They initially assumed that Liana and Felipe were wealthy and would have valuables worth stealing. However, it quickly became apparent that the couple carried neither money nor jewelry. Though frustrated, they were unwilling to abandon their scheme and decided on a different course of action. Pernambuco and Champagna kidnapped Liana and Felipe with the intention of demanding a ransom for their release. With no clear plan or capacity to develop one, the criminals hastily took Liana and Felipe to an abandoned house near the campsite. The location was grim and filthy, setting the stage for the unspeakable horrors that awaited them. After evaluating the surroundings, Pernambuco and Champagna concluded that the house was neither secure enough to hold Liana and Felipe nor adequately supervised. Because of this, they decided to leave and search for a more suitable location. Liana and Felipe were quickly moved to another spot within the same area. This new place was owned by an acquaintance of theirs, who later joined their group. Despite the presence of the owner, the house was in deplorable condition, dirty, chaotic, and completely unsanitary. Nonetheless, Pernambuco and Champaña deemed it more suitable for their purposes. Liana informed Pernambuco and Champaña that she was from a wealthy family and proposed that they demand a ransom in exchange for her release. This claim was true. Liana was the daughter of Ari Friedenbach, a well-known and respected lawyer in the city, and her family was wealthy. Pernambuco and Champaña were thrilled by this revelation, believing it to be a lucrative opportunity. During the night, Liana and Felipe were bound and confined in separate rooms of the house. Pernambuco and Champaña assaulted Liana, while her boyfriend Felipe, who was confined in the adjacent room, could hear her cries but was powerless to intervene, as he had been restrained and severely beaten. Stunned and shocked, Liana barely resisted and fervently prayed for the suffering to end swiftly. Liana and Felipe endured relentless torture and beatings. The following day, they were taken into the forest. However, Liana was not the first victim. After some time, Pernambuco and Felipe split off from the group and ventured further into the woods. There, Pernambuco quickly attacked Felipe using weapons. His body was later discovered on a forest trail near the site of his captivity. He had been forced to kneel with his hands tied behind his back before being attacked in the head from behind. Pernambuco and Champaña had learned that Felipe came from a modest family, which meant there would be no ransom paid for him. This disappointed them. Additionally, they saw him as a potential obstacle and liability, which led them to decide to kill him as soon as possible. Liana was not present during the killing. She had stayed behind. However, she heard the weapon and was shocked to realize they had attacked Felipe. When she inquired about what had happened to Felipe, they responded that he had been released. Liana knew better than to believe that and understood that the kidnappers wouldn't take such a risk. What she didn't realize in that moment was that her own time was running out. Liana was left alone with Pernambuco and Champaña, both of whom refused to follow her advice and never made ransom demands to her father. They lacked the ability to organize everything anonymously and avoid detection. These incompetent criminals, driven by greed, attempted a kidnapping but failed miserably. Now, they were unsure of what to do with Liana. On one hand, they wanted to keep the beautiful girl for themselves and enjoy her company for a while. On the other hand, they feared that people would start searching for her and realized they needed to get rid of her soon. 3 days after Liana and Felipe had left, Liana's father, Ari Friedenbach, discovered their real plan when he tried to contact her. He learned that Liana wasn't with a group of friends from the church as she had claimed. Furious, he realized that they had secretly run off together. His inability to reach either his daughter or Felipe raised serious concerns for both him and her mother. Neither parent could imagine the nightmare their 16-year-old daughter was enduring at that moment. Using all of his resources, Ari worked to track down his daughter's whereabouts. He found out that Liana and Felipe had reached São Paulo and entered the forest, where their phones were last pinged. A friend of Liana and Felipe confirmed the information but did not know the exact location of their camp. Despite the lack of specifics, this was still a lead. Ari submitted a report to law enforcement regarding the disappearance of Liana and Felipe, prompting the police to begin their investigation. Ari leveraged all of his connections to expedite the search for his daughter in the dense forest. A rescue team promptly arrived at the location reported by the friends of Liana and Felipe. They quickly found Liana and Felipe's abandoned campsite, which displayed troubling signs: a torn tent and scattered belongings. There were clear signs that something serious had happened here, as the tent appeared to have been cut open with a knife. This suggested human intervention, leading the police to suspect that they might have been attacked or kidnapped. At the site, investigators discovered clothing, Liana's wallet, and her discharged mobile phone. The search continued into the forest, and tragically, they discovered the body of her boyfriend, Felipe. This discovery heightened fears and diminished hope of finding Liana alive. Meanwhile, at the house where Liana was being held captive, the owner, Antonio Caetano Silva, arrived with his friend, Agnaldo Pires. Champaña, the kidnapper, told them that Liana was his girlfriend. Shockingly, he offered her to his friend, and the offer was accepted. Agnaldo and Antonio abused and tortured Liana repeatedly. Back at home, Liana's father, upon learning of Felipe's murder, took action. Determined to find his daughter, he mobilized the national press to bring attention to the case. The search efforts intensified due to growing public attention. A businessman, moved by the tragedy, contributed to the operation by using his helicopter to distribute 5,000 leaflets with photographs of Felipe and Liana across the region. Photos of Liana and Felipe were widely circulated, but sadly, no useful information could be gathered. Despite an attractive reward, local residents could provide no helpful information about their whereabouts. Several people reported seeing a couple in the woods, prompting volunteers and search teams to focus on checking the area near the teenagers' abandoned camp. Meanwhile, Champaña, Antonio and Agnaldo assumed that Liana might be searched for in the forest and decided to quickly leave the area. The next day, they took her and traveled to Antonio Matias de Barros's house, the first homeowner. Acting as though nothing had happened, they went fishing with Liana, convinced they would remain undetected. Champaña even lent her his sweatshirt during this time. By the end of the day, Champaña's older brother visited him because their parents were worried about his absence from home. Champaña introduced Liana as his girlfriend there, proudly showcasing her beauty and expressing his pride in having such a stunning girl by his side. However, his brother knew that Liana had been kidnapped but failed to report it to the police. During their conversation, the brother warned the group that authorities were searching the area intensively for her and had deployed significant resources. This alarmed the kidnappers, who realized rescuers might be close. Feeling the pressure, the kidnappers decided to flee. Champaña then resolved to kill Liana to prevent her from identifying them, though he lied to her and the others, claiming he would take her to the bus station and leave her there. At dawn, Champaña led Liana into a dense forest under the pretense of taking her to safety. Instead, he attacked her with a fishing knife on November 5, 2003. He stabbed her multiple times, beginning with a fatal wound to her neck that caused severe blood loss. As Liana fell and tried to cover the injury with her hand, Champaña continued to stab her chest, head, and back. He then struck her with a large stone on her head, killing her instantly. Only after confirming her death did he leave the gruesome scene, and the group of criminals fled. Champaña returned home, changed his clothes, wrapped the bloody knife in a rag, and hid it in a well near his house. He hoped that the incriminating evidence would not be discovered. However, 5 days later, on November 10th, Liana's body was found in a forest. She was still wearing Champaña's sweatshirt, which contained his DNA. Police were able to track the movements of the attackers and their victim, Liana. They visited all the huts where the kidnappers had stayed and successfully identified those involved. They promptly identified the perpetrators and determined their present location. Champaña and his accomplices were arrested within a few days. At Champaña's house, investigators found bloody clothing and the knife used in the crime. Tests confirmed that the blood on the objects belonged to Liana, and the items also contained Champaña's DNA. Champaña immediately confessed to the crime, proudly admitting that he had kidnapped and stabbed Liana simply because he wanted to. He explained that he was attracted to Liana and desired to treat her like a doll, a possession he could control entirely. However, circumstances forced him to kill her due to the police pursuit. He then detailed the complete chronology of Liana and Felipe's kidnapping. Despite being only 16 years old, Champaña was the leader of the group of juvenile criminals, which included adult accomplices. He was the same age as Liana, but his young age meant authorities handled his sentencing differently. According to the laws of the state, the gang's leader and instigator of this heinous crime was sent to a correctional facility for minors located in the northern part of São Paulo. As per legislation concerning minors who commit crimes, Champaña would remain in the facility until he turned 21. The trial of the criminals began in July 2006. Following the investigation, Antonio Caetano da Silva was sentenced to 124 years in prison for the multiple abuses of Liana. Another participant, Agnaldo Pires, was sentenced to 47 years for abuse, while Antonio Matias de Barros received a 7-year and 9-month sentence for violently detaining Liana and concealing evidence. The trial of the main defendants, Pernambuco and Champaña, lasted the longest, concluding in November 2007. Thanks to Liana's father actively bringing the case to public attention through the media, It gained significant publicity in Brazil and shocked the public with the atrocious acts committed by juvenile offenders against Liana and Felipe. As a result of the trial, Paulo Cesar da Silva Marques, Pernambuco, was sentenced to 110 years in prison for the premeditated murder of Felipe, as well as for illegal detention and kidnapping. The case of Roberto Aparecido Alves Cardoso, Champagna, presented additional challenges due to his status as a minor. As the gang leader, he remained in a juvenile correctional facility. His erratic and aggressive behavior led to multiple psychiatric evaluations organized by his lawyers. They argued that Champagna's impoverished upbringing and difficult childhood influenced his actions. Doctors diagnosed him with mild mental retardation and antisocial personality disorder, conditions that individually pose risks to society but, together, made him excessively dangerous. Champagna was moved to an experimental medical facility designed for rehabilitating criminals with mental disorders, as a harsher legal penalty was not permissible in his case. Despite this reasoning, the public was outraged by the leniency of the punishment and demanded he face long-term incarceration. Public indignation sparked a global debate on reforming the criminal justice system, though these changes did not affect Champagna since his crime occurred before the amendments were enacted. He remains in the medical institution under the care of the regional government. Although the crime was brutal, Champagna, the leader of the kidnappers, has shown no remorse for his actions. He has repeatedly petitioned the courts for release, claiming he has undergone treatment and no longer poses a threat. These requests have been denied by 3 separate courts, especially as he has made no effort to prove he has reformed. Remarkably, in 2007, early one morning, he managed to escape from the facility. With the help of an accomplice, he climbed a 7-meter wall using a ladder. However, law enforcement acted swiftly, capturing him 11 hours later before he could harm anyone. Champagna was returned to the medical institution promptly. Despite committing numerous heinous crimes, Champagna's circumstances are surprisingly comfortable. On December 17, 2007, a television report revealed that he was living in a cozy apartment within a medical facility. His accommodations included a comfortable sofa, a large 29-inch TV, and 5 meals a day prepared according to a personalized menu designed by a nutritionist. These living conditions starkly contrast with the anguish endured by his victims, Liana and Felipe, in their final days. The governor at the time justified these arrangements, claiming that isolating Champagna in this way was the safest method to prevent harm to society while managing his dangerous behavior through hospitalization. Experts estimate that keeping Champagna detained costs the state approximately $2,500 per month. Yet, lawyers argued that his forced detention is unconstitutional and pushed for his release. Meanwhile, Liana's and Felipe's families were devastated by their loss, as the tragedy shattered their lives. For example, Liana's parents were so overwhelmed by grief that they eventually divorced. These families fought hard to ensure justice and succeeded in bringing punishment to most of those involved in the crimes. Yet the main perpetrator, Champagna, escaped serious consequences and now lives in conditions far more comfortable than those he experienced before his hospitalization. This case sparked significant public outcry, leading to calls for lowering the age of criminal responsibility to 16. The proposal generated both support and opposition, resulting in active debate. Ultimately, these amendments were approved. Currently, Champagna is not in a prison serving a criminal sentence but is instead held indefinitely in a hospital on civil grounds due to his mental disorders, with approval from doctors and authorities. This arrangement is justified by his continued threat to society. A retrial for the crimes he committed against Liana and Felipe is no longer an option, as the country's criminal code prohibits punishing someone for the same offense twice. Consequently, Champagna remains in the hospital's relatively comfortable conditions to this day. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Philippines family. Carol and Benoa met in 2009 while working at the same bank, where Benoa was the manager and Carol was an employee. At that time, Carol was going through a tough divorce. Benoa, who had also been married before, quickly became her love at first sight, and they began a passionate romance that surprised everyone around them. Many believed their relationship was just a fleeting affair, but they proved them wrong. Their feelings deepened, and they decided to officially marry. Carol remarried in April 2012, and this marriage appeared genuinely happy. The couple seemed deeply in love, enjoyed being sociable, and loved hosting parties. They even planned a dream trip to Tenerife for their second wedding anniversary, but sadly, that plan would never materialize. Tragically, just before their trip, both Carol and Benoit were killed. At the time of their deaths, they did not have children of their own. But they are planning to have children soon. Therefore, Carol spent a lot of time with Steban, the son of friends, also bring Carol's godson, showering him with gifts and affection. Steban was a calm, sweet, and well-mannered child who appreciated their kindness. The couple Carol and Benoit loved hosting gatherings for their family and friends, and on one such occasion, they decided to Steban along. This decision led Steban to the innocent child becoming a victim of a horrific crime. On April 18, 2014, gunshots were heard near a Filipino family's home. Eyewitnesses quickly contacted the police. At around 10:15 p.m., an inspector was patrolling nearby when he received the call and rushed to the scene. He parked slightly away from the house and approached cautiously, using tactical techniques from his police training. He kept his weapon ready, suspecting that the shooter might still be there, but it turned out that the attackers had already fled. When arrived, the officer was taken aback by the amount of blood around Carol and Benoit's cars. It resembled a slaughterhouse. At that moment, all three victims were still alive. The officer first attended to the child Steban, who was lying on the ground with a severe gunshot wound to the head. He immediately called for assistance and requested an ambulance. The wait for the medics felt like an eternity, but they arrived in time to provide first aid. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, 9-year-old Steban died shortly after reaching the hospital. After that, the doctors turned there to Carol. Although she was conscious, she had lost a big amount of blood and was in serious condition. She was able to speak to the police and described how the attacker first approached her husband, Benoit. Just after that, gunshots were fired. The inspector asked Carol if she recognized the attacker, but she replied no and then lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Benoit showed almost no signs of life and was unconscious. He was placed in an ambulance along with Carol, with hopes of being saved at the medical center. Unfortunately, he died en route. Carol was the only victim who arrived at the hospital alive. She was rushed into surgery, and throughout the night, the surgeons worked tirelessly to save her, but their efforts were in vain. Carol's family was informed about the incident, and her parents and sisters were left in shock, anxiously waiting and unsure if Carol would survive. In the end, they lost her. Law enforcement officers were interviewing everyone who have witnessed the shooting. The first witness was a neighbor who saw a suspicious woman running away from the scene through his window. She was petite and slender, wearing a dark short dress. After the shooting, she quickly crossed the road and disappeared. Another witness, a former Marine, also looked out when the shooting occurred. The whole incident happened in just a few seconds before the attacker fled. He confirmed that the shooter was a woman. This neighbor's vantage point allowed him to see her getting into a car and driving away with her headlights off. He was able to provide a description of the car. There was limited information available, as there were no details regarding the license plates, and the model and color of the car could only be estimated. The police couldn't identify the shooter because there were no clear images of her face or any distinguishing features. Local residents were troubled by the event. Everyone was shocked by the tragedy, and neighbors of Carol who had CCTV cameras willingly gave the police full access to their footage. This led to the discovery of a suspicious dark sedan that parked away from Carol's home about half an hour before they left at 9:48 p.m. Just 2 minutes after the attack, this dark sedan drove away with a woman inside. The description matched the vehicle that the suspect used to flee the scene. Unfortunately, all video footage did not show the license plates or any specific details about the car. It was only through meticulous analysis of the video that the police identified the car model as a BMW 5 Series. The crimes were clearly recorded on tape. Benoit was shot 3 times, and 3 additional shots were meant for Carol, while the child Stebbins suffered a single gunshot wound to the head. The shooter used a 9mm pistol and aimed primarily at the upper body, leaving little chance for survival. Once investigators discovered that Benoit had recognized the shooter, they began to thoroughly examine his contacts to identify potential suspects. Detectives analyzed Benoit's computer and reviewed all communication methods, including the messaging apps used by he. The police gradually discovered that Benoit was not the ideal husband he appeared to be. Behind the facade of a perfect marriage lay several troubling truths. Benoit, who held a prominent position at the bank, frequently pursued women and used his authority to flirt with them. Multiple bank employees reported his behavior. One witness, Sandra Chundel, came to the bank in 2013 seeking a job. After a brief introduction, the manager, Benoit, invited her to his office. Sandra described feeling very uncomfortable being alone with him. He acted like a predator, rarely making eye contact and instead focusing on her neckline, which made her feel embarrassed. It seemed as if he was undressing her with his eyes. Although Benoit is seen as a loving family man, but he had regular affairs, engaging in cheating on his wife frequently rather than infrequently. This thing led to a long list of potential suspects, including his co-workers and the husbands of the women he had affairs with. However, witness accounts pointed to a woman being involved in the shooting, which drew immediate attention from investigators. Law enforcement recognized that there were many who might bear a grudge against Benoit, which meant they had a week's worth of interviews and investigations ahead of them. Benoit has a strong personality. He often speaks bluntly and is quite strict, which makes some people feel uncomfortable and stay away from him. Despite this, he is a valued member of the workplace and a great manager. Investigations into bank employees provided the police with no new leads. The next theory considered was that of murder linked to workplace issues. By examining Benoit's transactions, the police identified a couple of suspects who had strong motives for murder. While investigating Benoit's computer, the police discovered notes about Anna Maria Troiano. She married Trojan at a young age, and their marriage was initially strong. However, in 2002, they encountered serious problems when her husband, Trojan, lost his job due to the metallurgical plant's closure. At that time, they already had children, and the family's financial difficulty deeply affected him, making it difficult for him to support the household. Consequently, Anna decided to take on a different role and start her own business. Anna opened a hair salon and quickly became popular with the locals, bringing in a good income for her family. Meanwhile, Trojan took on the role of a stay-at-home dad, taking care of their children. He later joined Anna in their business and helped her grow it further. The hair salon was thriving, and the couple realized they needed more funds to expand. They envisioned a full-service beauty salon and wanted to hire other beauty professionals. They believed this would be a successful venture, but it required a significant investment for renting more space and buying new equipment and supplies. To secure the necessary funds, they approached the bank for a loan, the same bank where Benoit and Carol were employed. They spoke directly with Carol, who gave them a verbal agreement for a €175,000 loan. Anna and Trojan was eager to grow their business, so they quickly used a large portion of their own savings to rent a larger space. They were waiting for a loan from the bank, but at the last minute, Benoit discovered their situation and deemed Anna and her husband's business too risky for a loan. Benoit was strongly opposed to lending them money and refused their loan application. Unfortunately, Anna and Trojan had not yet signed a formal loan agreement, so their arrangement with the bank was only verbal. The bank manager, Benoit, acted within his rights and could deny the loan based on these circumstances, as Carol's verbal promise had no legal standing. Meanwhile, Anna and Trojan are having a lot of financial trouble after investing all their money into the business and desperately needed the loan. In response to their predicament, Anna and Trojan decided to sue the bank, even though they knew their chances of winning were slim. Ultimately, they lost the case, worsening their financial difficulties. They faced significant challenges due to ongoing pressure, leading them to lose everything. Their rush to pay rent resulted in a massive debt of €50,000. Although they rented a new space, they lacked the funds for renovations, repairs, and equipment, leaving the premises unused and without income. They also incurred hefty legal fees from hiring good lawyers. Unable to pay off their large debt all at once, they were forced to sell their house and move in with their parents. This situation causes constant conflicts between them, putting them at risk of divorce. Investigators believe that financial troubles and legal issues may have been the motive for the crime, as Anna and Trojan were desperate and destitute, so they may have wanted revenge. As a result, the police began to investigate them as potential suspects. They initially considered that the perpetrator might be a woman. However, Anna had a solid alibi. She was in another city at the time of the murder, therefore, she was immediately eliminated from the suspect list. Detectives then turned their attention to Anna's husband, Trojan. They discovered that Trojan had a criminal history involving violence. Additionally, he drove a BMW 5 Series, and older models of this car were spotted on CCTV footage near the house of Carol. The evidence against him continued to mount, especially when threats from he to Carol were found on her mobile phone, which were related to a bank's denial of a loan. Based on this information, a search warrant was issued for Trojan's family home. On May 13, 2014, 3 weeks after the murder of the Benoit family, police visited the home of Trojan's parents, where he was living. The officers searched the entire house and focused particularly on Trojan's computer. They discovered that 6 weeks prior to the murders, he had attempted to find the address of a Filipino individual on the internet, Benoit. This information, combined with other evidence, suggested that the murders were not accidental. Trojan had a motive. He had threatened and sought out the addresses of Benoit and Carol, those he blamed for his financial issues. As part of the investigation, the investigators needed to question Trojan directly. During the interrogation, he appeared calm and provided explanations for each inquiry. However, the investigators found him dishonest in his answers, so they could not release him, considering him the main suspect. Ultimately, Trojan was charged with illegal possession of a weapon, but at his parents' house, the police could not find the gun used in the murder. Trojan's wife, Anna, spoke up to defend him, claiming that his criminal acts were a thing of the past a long time ago. She explained that he had been young when he fell in with a bad crowd and, after spending 6 months in prison, decided to change his life. Over the past 13 to 14 years, Trojan had led an honest life, making it unfair to judge him solely based on a mistake from his youth. Anna stating that he could never have killed 3 people at once, especially a 9-year-old child, Steban. He loved his children deeply, and it was hard to believe that a good family man could shoot a child. He also maintained that he had an alibi for the time of the murder, which the police could not disprove during their initial interrogation. According to Trojan, he was in Germany visiting family on April 18, 2014, and he arrived around 10 p.m., which would clear him of any guilt since the attack occurred at approximately 10:30 p.m. Furthermore, witness testimonies suggested that a woman was the actual shooter. This has complicated the investigation. Trojan, who was 192 centimeters tall and weighed around 130 kilograms, was unlikely to be confused with the small woman seen wearing a short dress. This thing led to Trojan exclusion from the list of suspects, resulting in his release. However, the investigation continued. Officers traveled to Stuttgart, Germany, under a court order where they met Mario Trojana, the brother of Trojan. Mario shared crucial information, revealing that Trojan had not arrived in Stuttgart until late Saturday evening, around 11:30 p.m., the day after the massacre of the Benoist family. He described Trojan as looking very tired and shabby. This new information shifted the direction of the investigation. It became clear that Trojan lacked an alibi, providing ample opportunity to commit the triple murder. 5 months after the violent attack on the Benoist family, Trojan was taken into custody by police and faced several additional interrogations. The investigators were determined to uncover the truth. Initially, Trojan claimed that he left home in the evening after arguing with his wife. He said he was going to Germany to visit his brother, Mario. However, during multiple interrogations, he changed his story. He stated that he intended to end his life due to various personal issues. While driving along a long country road, he claimed to have consumed a large amount of illegal substances. He then lost consciousness and only woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning. After regaining consciousness, he decided against end his life and set off to visit his brother Mario in Stuttgart. Trojan had a new alibi that allowed him to continue lying, but he inadvertently gave the police a clue. He drove a modern car equipped with a Wi-Fi module, which automatically connects to available networks. Investigators began reviewing footage from the security cameras of Benoist's neighbors. An officer noted that a BMW 5 Series, which the attacker used, had stopped near a gym. This gym offered free Wi-Fi, and records of all connections were maintained. This allowed them to verify whether the Trojan family's BMW was near Benoist's home during the time of the shooting. The car was actually recorded at this location at the time of the shooting. Trojan made a critical error by giving his clothes to the police for examination. When forensic experts searched his house, they discovered gunpowder residues on the clothing. It became clear that Trojan was responsible for the murders of family Benoist. The next step was to persuade the jury of his guilt. On September 10, 2014, Trojan was officially charged with triple premeditated murder. There was considerable confusion and deception surrounding the case. He continually altered his story in an attempt to evade responsibility. Investigators began to suspect that his wife, Anna, might also be involved, since witnesses reported seeing a woman at the crime scene. However, there was no evidence to prove Anna was guilty, so she was not charged. On February 6, 2017, Trojan stood trial before a jury. Relatives of Benoist's family, along with Steban's relatives, were present at the execution, joining together to demand justice. They sought to hold Trojan accountable for the lives he had taken. The prosecution outlined the crime. Trojan, furious Benoist and Carol due to his own financial troubles, decided to track down and kill the couple. When their child, Steban, saw his face, he murdered the boy to eliminate a witness. The prosecutor clarified that Carol had never met Trojan before, she only knew his wife, Anna, which is why she did not recognize him during the attack. The prosecutor argued that the witnesses who claimed to see a woman at the scene were mistaken and confused a passerby for the real killer. During the trial, relatives of Benoist and Carol spoke about they, describing them as kind, friendly people and are outstanding experts in their fields. Unfortunately, Carol's kindness may have led to tragedy. She tried to help the Trojan family by promising them financial support, but her husband, who was more experienced and cautious, thought it was too risky and refused to lend them money. While the situation was distressing for the Trojan family, it wasn't without options. They could have approached other banks for a loan or explored different solutions. Instead, they chose to retaliate by killing two bankers, Benoist and Carol, with Steban. During the hearing, the accused Trojan appeared with his face covered, a request made by his lawyer to uphold the presumption of innocence. Trojan showed a complete lack of understanding of the situation and maintained his innocence until the very end. His demeanor and confidence even seemed to sway the jury. His lawyers emphasized that he was a good father and could not possibly have shot another person's child, Steban. They also argued that the absence of a murder weapon, along with witness statements confirming the presence of women at the crime scene, made it impossible to accuse Trojan. It appeared that the jury was leaning towards acquittal. However, on the sixth day of the trial, crucial evidence emerged against Trojan. A video from his mobile phone was presented, which seemingly showed him accidentally capturing himself hiding the gun under a pillow. The fact that the gun was a rare model, linked to his criminal history, weighed heavily against him. Additionally, the gun left distinct traces of gunpowder that were identified as matching. This evidence contradicted his statements, shifting the case's momentum towards the prosecution. Trojan's lies ultimately became the critical turning point in the trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks, after which the jury was certain of Trojan's guilt. Trojan was convicted of 3 counts of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The defendant has already appealed to both the Court of Cassation and the European Court of Human Rights, seeking release due to what he claims was an unjust verdict, but both appeals were denied. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Farquharson family. At around 8 p.m. on September 4, 2005, a man emerged from the water near Lake Victoria in Australia, soaked and distressed. He flagged down a passing car, desperately seeking help. The man said that the car he was in, carrying 3 children, had crashed into a fence and fallen into the water. The man was later identified as Robert Farquharson, the children's father. Inside the submerged car were his 2-year-old son Bailey, 7-year-old Tyler, and 10-year-old Jai. Robert asked the driver to take him to the children's mother, who lived 8 kilometers from the lake. The driver complied and called emergency services at 000 to report the accident during the journey. As word spread, people flocked to the scene and some even dove into the water, hoping to rescue the children, but their efforts were futile. The car remained submerged and unreachable. Eventually, police, medical personnel, and rescuers arrived to assist. Robert explained to the police that while he had managed to escape the sinking car, he was unable to free the children, prompting him to seek help. His mobile phone had malfunctioned due to water damage, forcing him to stop a passing car for assistance. The search and rescue operation faced challenges due to darkness, and Robert could not pinpoint where the car had gone underwater. Although the water was cold, the divers continued their search for the car, aiming to help the children trapped inside. Time was critical, as the chances of survival diminished rapidly. It was essential to act quickly before the car filled with water. Around 2 a.m., divers recovered the bodies of the 3 children from the water. The car was about 30 meters from shore, submerged at a depth of 7.5 meters. Inside, the children were desperately trying to escape. They unbuckled their seatbelts, but tragically, they were unable to escape. Jai's body was found in the front door, while Tyler and Bailey were still in the back seat. Cindy, the boy's mother, was in shock after losing 3 sons in a flash. She was hospitalized and given sedatives to help her cope with her grief. Meanwhile, Robert was also hospitalized with hypothermia and minor injuries. The Farquharsons were well regarded in the community and were considered a model family. Cindy and Robert met in 1990. They welcomed their first child, Jai, in late 1994, their second, Tyler, in 1998, and eventually married in 2000. Bailey, their third child, was born 2 years later. Jai, the oldest brother, aspired to be a fireman or rescuer. On the day of the tragedy, he helped his younger brothers unbuckle their belts in an attempt to save everyone, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so. Tyler, the middle brother, is known for his playful and prankish nature, while the youngest, Bailey, is only 2 years old and is very attached to his brothers. The boys' parents had divorced several years before the tragedy. The children lived with Cindy, but Robert visited regularly and maintained open communication with them. The tragic day was also Father's Day, and the boys spent time with their father. Cindy gave Robert a set of pots and a framed photo of his sons as gifts for the occasion. Robert took the children to KFC for lunch, then they stopped at a store to buy a new baseball bat before going to their mother's house. On the way, an accident occurred. After recovering, Robert was questioned by the police. He claimed he was not speeding, but during the drive, he had a severe coughing fit that caused him to lose control of the car. The car crashed into a fence and ended up in the water, sliding several meters before starting to sink. The children in the car were screaming. Robert managed to surface to call for help and intended to go back to rescue the children, but he was unable to do so. A toxicology report found that Robert had not consumed alcohol or used illegal drugs on the day of the incident. He had just recovered from the flu and was suffering from a severe cough. Although the incident was ruled an accident, the police needed to conduct a thorough investigation. A memorial was set up on the shore of the lake, where people brought flowers, candles, and toys in memory of the children. Robert felt guilty about the accident and sought forgiveness from his ex-wife. He expressed that he tried his best to save the children but was unable to do so. His family members supported him during this difficult time, and Cindy defended Robert, believing in his innocence. She accepted that the children's deaths were a tragic accident. Forensic experts at the accident scene were puzzled by the absence of skid marks or braking marks on the road, which were expected to be present. They later found that when the car was discovered, its ignition and headlights were off, and the rear doors were locked. This raised questions. How could this have happened? Could it be that the father intentionally did this instead of trying to save his children? On September 11th, Cindy and Robert were released from the hospital and were able to hold a burial for their boys. Approximately 600 people attended the ceremony, with nearly the entire community coming to offer their condolences. The local residents who supported the family during this tragic time were also mourning alongside the heartbroken parents, who were struggling to cope. Robert's car was taken for inspection to check its overall functionality, especially the brakes and steering system. There might have been a technical issue that caused the brakes to fail. Police continued their work at the lake, trying to piece together how the incident occurred and why, with the goal of making the area safer. They attempted to recreate the events using the same car, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The steering wheel did not turn far enough to the right for the car to slide into the lake. This led police to question Robert's account, and he was asked to come to the police station for further questioning. He repeated the same story but couldn't clearly explain why the car's ignition, heating, and headlights were off. There were no signs of skidding or braking on the road. Police offered him a lie detector test, which Robert agreed to, but he failed. Experts determined that reaching the water would require turning the steering wheel sharply to the right by 220 degrees. If Robert had merely lost control due to coughing, he wouldn't have made such a sudden turn. He would have just gone off the road and not into the water. All checks on the car showed it was in perfect working condition, with no issues with the brakes, steering, headlights, or ignition. Therefore, police believed the actions were deliberate. The case was referred to the Homicide Division, and a detailed investigation began. An autopsy on the boys revealed they drowned, but their bodies had numerous abrasions and bruises, suggesting they may have been injured before their deaths. 3 months later, Robert was arrested and charged with the murder of the boys. He was shocked by the accusations and insisted that he was innocent, claiming that it was a tragic accident. Soon after, a witness came forward, one of Robert's friends, who revealed that just days before the incident, Robert had expressed his desire to harm his children then end his life as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. Because after the divorce, Cindy got everything. A nice house, a luxury car, money, and even she started dating another man and seemed happy, with plans to remarry. Robert was jealous of her, but at the time his friend did not believe he would do it. Robert later confessed to this friend that he had deliberately drowned their children as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. He was released on $200,000 bail before the trial because the judge considered the incident an accident and decided that he did not pose a threat to society. As part of his bail conditions, Robert was required to stay home and wear a tracking bracelet. The trial began in August 2007. During the trial, Robert's ex-wife Cindy expressed her belief that he did not intentionally kill their children. She characterized him as a devoted family man. Cindy found it hard to comprehend why Robert would harm their children, even if he were upset with her. However, she acknowledged that Robert had been unhappy with her new relationship and had previously said he wouldn't let the children live with her new partner or pay alimony. Cindy firmly believed that the incident was an accident. She recalled suggesting to Robert that he spend Father's Day with the children. She sent her sons off at 3 p.m., and their father picked them up, with the expectation that they would return home by 7:30 p.m. Around 8 p.m., she was shocked to find a soaked and frantic Robert at her door. After learning about the accident, Cindy's new partner, Stephen, quickly drove to the lake. He began diving in, searching for the car to rescue the children. Robert, accompanied by his lawyer, maintained that it was an accident. A local resident who was near the lake that day testified at the trial about Robert's behavior while he waited for the boys to be rescued. The witness noted that Robert seemed more focused on finding a cigarette than on his children, which surprised him. When asked why he wasn't more worried about his children, Robert did not respond and did not attempt to dive into the water to save them. Another driver who stopped to help also provided testimony. He noted that Robert did not ask him to call for help but instead wanted a ride to see his wife. By that time, Robert appeared to have accepted that the children were dead. The driver was confused because Robert wanted to see his wife instead of seeking help for the children. Although confused, the driver took Robert with him and gave him a phone to call for help. However, Robert refused, saying that it was too late and the children were dead. The driver later felt that Robert might be mentally unstable. Regretting his decision to follow Robert's wishes, the driver called the emergency services himself, wishing he had done more to save the children. A nearby police officer commented on Robert's lack of emotion, saying that he did not act like a father who had just lost 3 sons. In contrast, the children's mother appeared very confused, pulling her hair, crying and begging for help, while Robert was barely responsive. Cindy and Stephen, her new partner, joined the rescuers to help, while Robert didn't mention his cough, which he claimed had led to his loss of control, until 11 days later. During the trial, the doctor who treated Robert confirmed that Robert was indeed ill. Robert was coughing a lot and felt weak and lethargic. However, the doctor believed that the cough would not have caused Robert to turn the wheel so suddenly. After the divorce, Robert suffered from depression, mental instability, and personality disorder. He regularly saw a psychiatrist. On the morning before the tragedy, Robert told the psychiatrist that he had forgotten to take his antidepressants. The prosecution presented evidence that there were no skid marks or brake marks on the road, and that the back door was locked and the headlights were off, which could not have happened accidentally. The prosecution argued that Robert had tried to kill the children out of revenge against Cindy, primarily because he wanted to avoid paying her child support. The jury found these arguments convincing, and on October 5, 2007, they found Robert Farquharson guilty. He was sentenced to the maximum sentence of 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. In sentencing, the judge stated that Robert's actions had destroyed his entire family in revenge against Cindy and had also ruined his own life. Cindy, the children's mother, fainted after hearing the verdict and had to be rushed to the hospital because she did not expect the verdict to be like that. After the trial, she was very confused by the experts' opinions. That Robert had intentionally killed the children to get revenge on her. Cindy wanted to visit Robert in prison to understand the truth of what happened, but he refused to see her. Cindy sued her ex-husband, Robert, for pain and suffering as well as for the death of their 3 children. As a result, Robert was found guilty and ordered to pay her 225,000 Australian dollars. Later, it was discovered that the friend who testified against Robert during the trial had a history of violence and multiple convictions, which raised doubts about his credibility. With this new information, Robert and his lawyer filed an appeal, which was accepted on December 17, 2009. Robert was released on bail of 200,000 Australian dollars on December 21. Due to errors in the judicial process, a new trial was scheduled, beginning in May 2010. During the trial, a new witness testified, a woman who said she was driving behind Robert's car near the lake. She described the car as moving at a normal speed before it suddenly swerved to the right multiple times. Inside the car, she saw 3 children, and she noted that Robert was purposefully guiding his boys toward the water. He did not attempt to brake or change direction. Most notably, Robert remained calm and did not cough while sitting behind the wheel. The woman drove away quickly and did not realize that Robert had driven his car into the water. She thought he would simply stop by the lake. She later learned about the tragedy on TV the next day and came to understand that Robert had intentionally drowned his children. She had been unable to contact anyone sooner because she was receiving cancer treatment in the hospital. After witness testimony, Cindy developed a deep hatred for Robert, believing that he had intentionally taken the lives of her children. She was convinced of his guilt and asked the court to sentence him to life in prison, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Cindy had Robert's name removed from her children's records and from their gravestones. On July 22, 2010, the jury again found Robert guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. In 2010, Cindy married Stephen and they had 2 sons together. Sadly, Cindy passed away in May 2022 at the age of 50. Robert remains in prison, serving his sentence. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Amanda Perreault. On February 3, 2020, Seth Perreault called his boss, the sheriff, to report a tragic incident at his home. His wife had died and he needed help. When the police arrived, Seth had just gotten out of the shower. Inside the bedroom, they discovered the body of 44-year-old Amanda on the bed, shot in the head. Initially, the scene appeared to match Seth's description on the phone. Then forensic experts began combing the area and collecting evidence. Seth was taken to the police station to give a statement. He said that he and his wife, Amanda, were lying in bed when they got into an argument. During the argument, Amanda suddenly pulled out a gun and shot herself in the head. Seth said that he had no time to react and stop her. When questioned by police, he described their day before the tragedy. They had dropped their children off at school and had not been anywhere else until the incident. Seth appeared extremely upset, almost in tears, expressing regret for losing the woman he loved more than anything after 8 happy years together. Initially, Seth said he had not touched Amanda. However, he later said he had hugged her several times after the shooting. He struggled to remember whether he had touched the gun and repeatedly claimed that he was a good cop. The police asked him more questions, leading to increasing doubts about his credibility. They knew that Seth, who had come from another police department, had a bad reputation and was known for aggressive behavior at work. When Amanda's relatives heard about the tragedy, they rushed to the house and informed the police that Amanda would never act in such a way or leave her children with an abusive husband. They were convinced that Seth had killed Amanda and urged the police to investigate the possibility. Meanwhile, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene and concluded that it was a homicide. Their findings were supported by the location of the body and the gun. A .380 caliber Smith & Wesson was discovered nearby, with a discarded magazine found next to her right side. A bullet was found in the chamber of the semi-automatic pistol. When the gun is fired, the spent cartridge case is ejected, and a new cartridge is loaded. Because there was a bullet in the chamber, the magazine should have been removed after the shot was fired. If the gun was functioning properly, the magazine could only be ejected by pressing a button, which would have had to be done after the shot. However, if the Amanda died immediately, who pressed the button? The weapon was tested and found to have no faults. Additionally, there was no blood on Amanda's hands or on the long sleeves of her shirt. The bedroom contained 20 miniature whiskey bottles, and there were no signs of forced entry or any intruders. The primary suspect was the Seth. He was a police officer trained to use a gun, and the murder was carried out with his service weapon. Police began investigating the couple's relationship more closely and discovered some interesting details. Amanda Perot was born in 1975 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a small town with a population of about 29,000. Relatives described her as a cheerful and kind person, always willing to help others and devoted to her family. The Amanda had 2 children from her first marriage, which ended in a difficult divorce due to her ex-husband's abusive behavior. Amanda struggled to escape this toxic relationship. In 2011, after her divorce, Amanda met Seth online. At that time, Seth was seriously ill with cancer, unemployed, and living with his parents, who were supporting him financially. He loved communicating online, and when he discovered Amanda's profile, he felt intrigued. He contacted her and they started chatting. To Amanda, Seth seemed like the complete opposite of her ex-husband. He was sweet, polite, and kind. As their conversations continued, Amanda and Seth grew close and started considering a face-to-face meeting. Eventually, Seth's health improved, and his cancer went into remission. He invited Amanda to meet in person. And their date went well. They instantly liked each other and began dating. During this time, Amanda learns that Seth has a daughter from a previous marriage who lives with mother, and he is determined to fight for custody of the child. Amanda moved in with Seth's parents along with. They were pleased that Seth had finally found a partner and believed everything was going well. Amanda took on the responsibility of caring for Seth, which led her to drift away from her own family. 2 of her sisters noted that after the move, Amanda dedicated herself entirely to looking after Seth. She also worked and took care of her children, leaving her little time to connect with family and friends. It was a challenging period for Amanda, but she never complained. Seth insisted that Amanda quit her job to be with him all the time, and his fairly wealthy parents supported this decision. Over time, Amanda's relatives lost touch with her. She stopped attending family gatherings, missing Christmas and Thanksgiving. She also ceased to personally congratulate her relatives on their birthdays, choosing instead to do so only by phone. Amanda became focused entirely on Seth and the children, celebrating all holidays with his family. Seth then took Amanda's cell phone, saying she didn't need it because she was always home with him. Amanda didn't have a phone, so her family couldn't contact her. Seth controlled every aspect of Amanda's life and wouldn't let her leave the house alone. After 5 years together, Seth and Amanda secretly married on June 23, 2017. Only their children attended the wedding. They didn't invite anyone else or tell anyone about this important moment in Amanda's life. Many believe that Seth married Amanda primarily for his own interests. He was determined to gain custody of his daughter from his ex-wife, and to do this, he needed to formalize his relationship with Amanda. Many thought this was his true motivation for marrying her. Without this goal, he might not have married at all. Although Seth appeared happy with Amanda, he had complete control over her and was very persistent in getting his way. He spent months in court fighting for custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was successful and won full custody of his daughter, after which Seth took his daughter to live with them. Amanda had no say in family decisions and was completely submissive to his decisions. In 2018, Seth's father purchased a beautiful house for them near the lake, and the family moved in. Amanda remained a housewife, as Seth did not allow her to work. A year later, Seth secured a job as a patrolman with the Tenton Police Department. After Seth started his job, his relationship with Amanda deteriorated. He began drinking excessively after work. One night, he fell down the stairs while drunk and got hurt. This led him to misuse painkillers along with alcohol, causing him to become extremely irritable and aggressive. He often threatened Amanda physically. On January 28, 2020, after suffering another attack from her husband, Amanda escaped to a neighbor's house and called 911 for help. When the police arrived, Amanda showed them the bruises from the abuse. Their 3 children confirmed her story. Seth's 8-year-old daughter reported that she had heard screams and seen her father pushing and hitting Amanda. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet to avoid the violence. After Amanda fled, Seth discovered the children hiding and forced them to come out. They obeyed but were very frightened of him. Seth was then arrested and charged that evening. Amanda called her sister, asking for a ride the next morning because she was afraid to stay home, knowing that her husband would be released soon. The next morning, Seth was released on $1,500 bail and returned home. Amanda later called her sister back saying that she didn't need to come anymore because everything was fine. However, her sister was shocked, realizing how dangerous Seth was to Amanda and the children. She couldn't understand why Amanda continued to forgive him. Amanda's sister came to her house and tried to convince her to leave with the children and divorce Seth. Amanda was against this idea. Her sister then left. Seth was temporarily suspended during the investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child abuse. Amanda took part in the hearings related to Seth's case. When the judge asked if she wanted a restraining order against him, she declined, saying she had forgiven him. As a result, Seth was released, and they went home together. Just 5 days later, on February 3, 2020, Amanda was found dead. Police, after reviewing a history of conflict and domestic violence, concluded that Amanda's death was not an accident. They suspected Seth of shooting her. During questioning, Seth maintained his innocence, claiming that their argument was due to recent allegations of domestic violence. During the argument, she pulled out a gun and shot herself. The police questioned how Amanda could have accessed Seth's gun, given his strict nature and the control he had over her. Police later found a handwritten note on Amanda's nightstand in which she praised her husband and described his great character. In the note, she wrote, "Amanda Perot wants to retract her statement. Her husband has never raised a hand to hit her. She feels very bad for the humiliation she has caused him. She is willing to accept any punishment she deserves for her actions." However, Amanda's sister does not believe that Amanda would write such things about her husband. The handwriting on the note appears to be different from Amanda's usual style, raising concerns that she may not have written it herself, or that she wrote it under pressure or at the behest of her husband. Therefore, the handwriting appears unusual. Seth has a hard time explaining the bruises on Amanda's body. Police suspect that he coerced her into writing the letter to make her death appear voluntary, in an attempt to escape guilt. The investigation is ongoing, with police believing Seth shot his wife and actively gathering evidence against him. They have interviewed the couple's friends and family to uncover more about the history of domestic violence in their relationship. Neighbors reported hearing screams from the couple's house almost daily and often saw Seth intoxicated. The community was aware that the couple frequently argued, with Seth being the aggressor when he drank. Amanda, on the other hand, appeared to be a quiet and modest person, and neighbors never saw her drinking. There were multiple instances where neighbors witnessed Seth dragging Amanda by her hair in their driveway. Although they felt sympathy for her, no one called the police out of fear of Seth, who was a police officer himself. On the day Amanda died, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. There were no sounds coming from the house. The only witness to the events was Seth, whose testimony was not trusted during the investigation. It was revealed that just 20 minutes before Seth's call, a deputy police officer had shown up at their door with a summons for domestic violence. Video from the doorbell camera showed the officer approaching, introducing himself, and waiting for someone to answer. Although Seth heard noises inside, no one answered. The deputy police officer were puzzled by Seth's behavior, knowing that Seth was a police officer who knew the procedures. Seth only needed to hand over some documents, so the deputy police officer wondered why he was hiding and refusing to open the door. Initially, the deputy police officer thought that Seth might not be fully clothed, which could explain the lack of response. He turned his back to the door and asked Seth to simply hand over the documents without looking inside, but still no one responded. This was unusual. After waiting another 7 minutes, the deputy police officer left. They later speculated that when Seth saw the police at the door, he became frightened. Apparently, a shot was fired just before the deputy police officer arrived. After the deputy left, he took a few minutes to calm down and then called his sheriff on his cell phone. Police later discovered that Seth had lied about not leaving the house on the day of the murder. Police reviewed surveillance cameras from the area and the couple's bank card transactions, finding that they had gone to a store 10 miles from their home that day and purchased 20 bottles of liquor. More importantly, the cameras recorded what the Seth was wearing: a Pink Floyd t-shirt and black sweatpants. 4 hours later, when police arrived at the Peralt's home, Seth was wearing different clothes. A plain black t-shirt and the clothes he had worn to the store were found in the washing machine, which had been turned off. In addition, Seth was still wet from his shower. Police suspected that he may have tried to wash off gunpowder residue and blood that may have gotten on him during the shooting, but he had not started the washing cycle. A small smear of Amanda's blood was later found on his pants, and traces of gunpowder were discovered on Seth's left hand. Based on this evidence, the investigation resumed just 2 days after the tragedy on February 5 in 2020. Seth was arrested for the murder of Amanda Perot. He denied any involvement in her death and also refuted allegations of domestic violence. The couple's 3 children were interviewed by child psychologists, and all 3 reported that Seth frequently abused their mother in front of them. The day before Amanda's death, she urged the children not to speak to the police, warning them that Seth might lose custody of their daughter and could retaliate violently. The children lived in constant fear of him. Their testimonies were presented as evidence during the trial. Seth's daughter requested to move in with her mother, and this request was granted, while Amanda's other children stayed with her sister throughout the trial. On August 21, 2020, something unexpected occurred. The autopsy report was released. The state medical examiner concluded that Amanda Perot had shot herself, citing the absence of struggle signs and the burns on her skin from the gunshot. This finding shocked the prosecution, who disagreed with the forensic expert's assessment. The trial began on November 3, 2020, with the prosecution presenting all the evidence that Seth was guilty: gunpowder residue on his hands, blood on his unwashed clothes, discrepancies in the placement of Amanda's body in the gun, and most importantly, Seth's motive for killing his wife. Despite this evidence, Seth maintained his innocence. His attorney argued that changing clothes and showering were not important. Seth simply chose to shower during the day and made no attempt to hide anything. The bloodstain may have been from a previous incident where Amanda accidentally hurt herself. However, the presence of gunpowder on Seth's hands was unexplained, It was suggested he might have gotten it while at the police station. The lawyer pointed out that even the state medical examiner concluded Amanda shot herself, as there were no clear signs of a struggle. While burns on her body indicated she was shot from a close distance, the prosecutor claimed that Seth had given her alcohol and drugs, preventing her from defending herself. Amanda's phone had photos of her with a bruise under her eye and a split lip, as well as videos of her husband threatening her, which she had recorded secretly. In a message to her sisters, Amanda said, "Seth just choked she until I almost lost consciousness. He split she lip." The prosecutor noted that a gun magazine was found next to her right hand, while a firearm with a loaded cartridge was located about 1.5 meters away against the wall and ceiling. Blood was also found on the bedspread, with 2 cartridges present, suggesting that the crime scene had been staged. This was in contrast to Seth's claim that he had not touched or moved the body or the gun. The sister of the Amanda testified in court that Amanda had told her just days before the tragedy that if anything happened to her, it would be at the hands of her husband. Police chief reported that when he received the call about Amanda's death, Seth initially mumbled something incoherent before suddenly screaming. Only after he calmed down was he able to explain what had happened. Additionally, Seth's cellmate testified during the trial, claiming that Seth confessed to him about killing his wife. He described how Seth had given Amanda alcohol, sedatives, and painkillers on the day she died, which caused her to lose consciousness, after which he shot her. A toxicology report confirmed that Amanda had high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system at the time of her death. On February 25, 2022, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Seth Perot, 45, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Seth's lawyers were furious with the verdict, claiming that there was no direct evidence to prove his guilt. Following the verdict, Seth Perot's new legal team filed its first appeal, which was denied. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Yingying Zhang. Yingying Zhang was a student from China who came to the USA after being invited by the University of Illinois. She and her fiancé from China were planning a wedding. Sadly, she never got the chance to wear her wedding dress, as she was killed just 6 weeks after her arrival in the USA. Born on December 21, 1990, Yingying was a Chinese ecology student who graduated from Beijing University with a master's degree in environmental engineering. Yingying is a smart and cheerful person. In April 2017, 26-year-old Yingying traveled to Champaign, Illinois in the USA, invited by the University of Illinois to study for a year in the plant-growing department of natural resources. She intended to pursue graduate studies afterward. In China, Yingying met her fiancé, Alenka. They were classmates and top students, having dated for several years. The couple planned to marry once she returned home. On June 9, 2017, Yingying was leaving school to meet a real estate agent to sign a lease. At 1:39 p.m., she texted the agent to confirm that she would arrive around 2:10 p.m. This was the last text she sent, and she never arrived. At 2:40 p.m., the real estate agent texted her to ask where she was, but received no response. The agent eventually left to meet another client. As hours went by and Yingying did not return, her friends became increasingly worried. She was supposed to return to campus after signing the contract, as she had no other plans for the day. Her friends repeatedly called and messaged her, but she did not reply. Even Alenka could not contact her. This situation was very alarming. In the evening, Yingying still had not returned. Too worried, Yingying's friends contacted the police and reported her missing. At first, the police thought she might be somewhere with her friends. However, after questioning all of her friends and finding no new information, along with no activity recorded on her bank cards or phone, they began a search. Her phone was turned off at 2:28 p.m. on the day she went missing and was never turned back on. The police searched the university campus, but no one saw Enying. A $10,000 reward was offered for information about Enying's location. After discovering she was missing, her parents and Alenka traveled to Illinois and raised the reward to $50,000 for any information that could lead to her return. Both her parents and Alenka joined the search efforts and committed to staying until they found she. The FBI joined the investigation. They tracked her phone, which had been detected at a bus stop close to the campus. Enying did not have a car and relied on public transportation, particularly buses. CCTV footage showed Enying boarding a bus at 1:35 p.m. She was supposed to transfer to another bus at 1:52 p.m. but missed it. Cameras then captured her walking to the next bus stop. While she was waiting, a black four-door Saturn Astra drove by, circled back, and stopped near her at around 2:03 p.m. After a brief conversation with the driver, Enying got into the car and left. This was the last time she was seen on surveillance cameras. The driver was the last person known to have seen her, but the license plate number was not shown on the footage. The FBI needs to determine who was driving the car. They found 18 black four-door Saturn Astras registered in the area. One notable feature of the car, as seen in surveillance footage, was the cracked rims. After examining all 18 cars, they identified one that matched the description and also had the same sunroof. The car belonged to 28-year-old Brent Christensen. Brent grew up in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and married his high school sweetheart Michelle Zortman in 2011. 2 years later, the couple moved to Champaign, Illinois, where he entered graduate school at the University of Illinois and worked as a teaching assistant. He left graduate school in 2016. Brent was considered a family man and had no criminal record. When FBI agents asked Brent about his whereabouts, he couldn't remember, mentioning he might have been sleeping at home or playing video games. His wife, Michelle, who he said he had an open relationship with, was away with another man. Brent allowed the agents to search his apartment and car. They discovered that a section of the car's interior, near the front passenger door, had been cleaned thoroughly while the rest of the car was still dirty. This was odd because cars are usually cleaned completely unless there is a specific reason for cleaning only part of it. A quick inspection of the apartment did not reveal any clues, so the agents took Brent to the police station for more questioning. At first, Brent denied knowing Enying or being involved in her situation. However, when shown surveillance footage, he admitted that he had been passing by and seen a girl who looked very upset. He said that he stopped to help her and she said she was late for a meeting, so he offered her a ride, which she accepted. He claimed that after suddenly taking a wrong turn a few blocks later, Enying became frightened and tried to open the locked front passenger door. He then stopped to let her out. After she escaped from the car, he never saw her again. When the police and Agent Igor asked him for a more detailed description of Enying, but he had difficulty distinguishing people of Asian descent. As a result, he became a suspect. There was only circumstantial evidence against him, not enough to make an arrest, so the police had to release Brent. However, they decided to follow him, monitor his activities, and gather more evidence of his possible involvement in Enying's disappearance. They realized that Brand was the person they needed to investigate. The FBI seized his phone, computer, camera, and other digital devices for analysis. They soon discovered that Brent was hiding important information. In March 2017, he visited a psychologist and revealed during his sessions that he was obsessed with thoughts of murder and fascinated by serial killers. He claimed that he had learned how to kill without leaving any evidence to avoid detection. Brent also confided in the psychologist that his life was falling apart. He had started drinking regularly and his wife Michelle, who was having an affair, had asked him for a divorce. Brent did not want to end the marriage. It was also revealed that Brent had met a woman named Gray Tora on a dating website. They began dating and met at his home. They agreed that Brent would take the dominant role in their relationship while Tora would be submissive. Brent even introduced Tora to his wife, who knew about their open relationship and that Tora was also seeing other men for intimate encounters. Police later discovered that his computer search history included terms like kidnapping, hygiene products, and how to track an iPhone. It appeared that he was searching for information on how to kidnap someone, disable phone tracking, clean up blood, and track a girl. However, this information was not enough to make an arrest. More evidence or a confession was needed from him. The FBI agent asked Tora, Brent's new girlfriend, to assist in the investigation, and she agreed to cooperate with the wiretap. On June 29, Brent attended a memorial event for the missing Yingying girl, where her family desperately begged for her return. During the event, Brent drank, smiled, and even leaned in to sing softly to Dash. Afterwards, he used the Notes app on his phone to write, "It's me. She's number 13. She's gone forever," and he drew the number 13 on his hand. This made Tora shiver. Tora felt uncomfortable listening to Brent's story, but he continued, seemingly trying to impress her. Brent had no idea that she was cooperating with the FBI and recording everything he said. Meanwhile, a drunken Brent revealed the grisly details of Yingying's final moments, smiling as he spoke. He took off Yingying's clothes and began doing various things to her. She endured everything. He tried to strangle her for 10 minutes but then let her go. She was still breathing, and he was shocked to learn that she was still alive. She fought harder than anyone he had ever met. She was not the only person he had murdered. Now, there were 13 victims. Brent told Tora that he first committed this crime when he was 19 years old. He dragged a corpse into the bathroom of his apartment and hit her over the head with a baseball bat. He then stabbed her in the neck and decapitated her. In the recording, he compared himself to his idol, Ted Bundy, and bragged that he had more victims than Jeffrey Dahmer and John Gacy. He boasted that he had attracted national attention. These recordings became crucial evidence against him. Brent was arrested the next day. His apartment was thoroughly searched with luminol, revealing a bloody handprint on the wall next to Brent's bed and in the bathroom. There was also blood on the passenger door of his car. A large bloodstain was found on his mattress, and a cadaver dog detected the scent of human remains in the bathroom. DNA from Yingying's toothbrush was found on a baseball bat, mattress, carpet, and in the bathroom. Brent's GPS data confirmed that he was present at the crime scene at the time of the incident. Additionally, receipts for trash bags and cleaning products were found in his home, along with a large gym bag, likely used to discreetly transport the remains. That morning at 7:45 a.m., he bought a large bottle of cheap rum from a liquor store. When he got home, he drank heavily. Then drove around looking for victims while intoxicated. After a few hours, he spotted a student from the university, Emily Hogan, walking to a bus stop near the campus. He approached her and identified himself as an undercover police officer and asked her to get into his car for questioning. She refused and ran away. She later identified him and posted a warning on Facebook to warn others about the fake police in the area, which happened after the disappearance. After Emily rejected him, Brent sought out another victim and met a girl. He pretended to be a police officer and offered her a ride in his car. She believed him because he had a police badge, had a police radio, and drove a police car, so she got in. Once in the car, he drove home, confiscated her phone, and turned it off. Brent then tied her hands, took her to his apartment, raped and murdered her, and then dismembered her body. He bought cleaning supplies and attempted to clean both the house and the car, but investigators later discovered traces of blood hidden under the carpet and behind the baseboards. Brent claims the idea was spontaneous and unplanned. However, his computer search history suggests otherwise, suggesting he was prepared for it. Brent is charged with kidnapping, murder, and making false statements to a federal agent, and faces the death penalty. His trial began in June 2019. His lawyer argued that Brent had a difficult childhood, with his mother being an alcoholic and him not socializing with his siblings and lacking friends. During that time, he often contemplated ending his life and struggled with mental health issues, sleep problems, and substance abuse, which led him to seek help. His lawyer noted that Brent was not in a good mental state and was plagued by dark thoughts, especially after his wife mentioned divorce. This led to a downward spiral for him. At that moment, Brent was in the courtroom, wiping away tears. The attorney admitted Brent was guilty but asked the jury to give him a lenient sentence. During the trial, Brent's wife, Michelle, reported seeing a large gym bag and noted that Brent left with it on June 12. She said that there was no foul odor and that he easily threw the bag over his shoulder, leading her to believe that it could not have contained a body. It must have contained something light. However, she also acknowledged that the bag was large enough to hold a person and acknowledged that her husband could lift the weight of a girl. Michelle noticed new cleaning products in the house and stains on the carpet. Brent explained that he had a nosebleed, which caused the stains. So he purchased a cleaning product to try to clean the carpet. Despite the large stain, Michelle didn't find this suspicious. Calls from prison were recorded. During one call, Michelle told Brent that Tora had set him up. In court, Brent Christensen confessed to everything but didn't disclose the location of the bodies. On July 18, 2019, after 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Brent guilty on all charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Later, Michelle relocated to another state and changed her last name to begin a new life. After the trial, Tora sought psychological help due to the traumatic experiences she had from hearing Brent's actions. A suicide note was discovered in Brent's cell, suggesting that he may have been planning to end his life or seek attention. He was then placed in solitary confinement and closely monitored. Although Brent claimed to have a 13th victim, no evidence of the existence of additional victims was ever found. He denied these allegations in court. The FBI analyzed 19 unsolved missing persons cases in Illinois and Wisconsin and submitted Brent's DNA for comparison, but no matches were found. It appears that Brent was just bragging to Tora and made up the story. Inying's family was not satisfied with the verdict. They felt that the killer deserved the death penalty. After learning that their daughter had been brutally murdered, all the parents wanted was to give Inying a proper burial. They were heartbroken to discover that their daughter's body would likely never be found. In their grief, they begged Brent to reveal the location of their daughter's remains. He told his lawyer that he had dismembered her body, put the pieces in 3 separate trash bags, and thrown them into a dumpster at his apartment complex. He also claimed that her phone, textbooks, and backpack were thrown into another dumpster, which was likely taken to a landfill. Police discovered that the trash at his apartment had been emptied 3 days after she went missing and the trash had been taken to a landfill. There, the trash had been compacted multiple times, mixed with other waste and scattered over a wide area, making it nearly impossible to find her remains. The only consolation for the family is that Brent will serve his sentence without parole, ensuring he cannot commit any more crimes. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Yoselin Ortega. Yoselin Ortega was born in 1962 in the Dominican Republic as the youngest of 8 siblings. Her family was relatively wealthy, and her parents owned a wine cellar. She did not encounter any difficulties until her teens, when a sister of hers suddenly died from a brain aneurysm. This thing deeply affected her. She did not leave the house for about a year and suffered from depression, missing her sister. During this time, she began hearing voices urging her to harm others, but she confided only in a few sisters, asking them to keep it secret. For many years, almost no one knew about this, not even her parents, who noticed some odd behavior but attributed it to grief and depression over her sister's death. Yoselin continued with her life, resisting the voices and not harming anyone. After finishing school, she attended university to study accounting. Despite her struggles, but she graduated in 1985. She then decided to move to New York, where one of her sisters lived. After that, she and her sister started living together, working together to cover expenses. Eventually, Yoselin met a man and started a relationship with him, marrying in 1995. The following year, they had a son named Jesus. However, after their child was born, the relationship between the couple became worse even though they tried to save it. In 1999, Yoselin and her husband are divorced, leaving her alone with a young child in New York, where the cost of living is very high. Faced with a lot of financial difficulties, so she decided to send her 4-year-old son, Jesus, for grandparents to take care of. Then she returned to the United States, where she can earn more money for herself and her child. Yoselin lived with her sister, and they supported each other by working together in a factory and taking part-time cleaning jobs. She kept in regular contact with her parents and son, calling them almost every day. In 2004, Yoselin became a U.S. citizen. After saving enough money, Yoselin returned to her homeland in March 2008 to raise her son. Things were going well until April 2008, when her best friend Celine tragically ended her life on a balcony. This news plunged Yoselin into depression, making her extremely paranoid. She did not leave the house and forbade her son to go to school. Whenever she heard noises outside, like a dog barking, she will hide under the bed and force her son to hide with her. As time passed, the situation improved. Yoselin regained her composure, and her fears and worries faded away. She returned to work in the USA with her sister, leaving her son with her parents. Eventually, she met the affluent Krim family, who were looking for a nanny for their children. Kevin Krim, the head of the family, was a Harvard graduate, and his wife, Marina, graduated from the University of Southern California. They met at an Italian restaurant through friends and immediately hit it off. They got married in 2003. Marina and Kevin's first daughter, Lucia, was born in 2006, followed by their second daughter, Nessie, in 2009. When Marina was pregnant with her third child, the family relocated from California to New York due to Kevin's job. He was offered the position of Chief Executive Officer at Symbian. Previously, he worked in senior roles at Bloomberg and Yahoo. The family settled in one of Manhattan's finest neighborhoods, Upper West Side. Marina stays at home to do housework and take care of the children, but she later started a blog to document their daily lives as a personal hobby. The second daughter, Nessie, had health issues that required Marina's full attention. As a result, Marina began to have difficulty doing housework and had no time to take her children to extra classes like dancing or swimming. Additionally, she was in the late stages of pregnancy, making it difficult for her to manage anything. Her husband, Kevin, was frequently away on business trips and couldn't assist her, so they decided to hire a nanny for help. Marina and Kevin began searching for a nanny. At the dance studio Marina attended with her children, they met Yoselin's sister, Celia, housekeeper for another family. Celia introduced Yoselin to them and sent her younger sister's resume. Impressed by Yoselin's experience with children, they contacted Yoselin's previous employer and received a positive recommendation. Then, they invited Yoselin for an interview and immediately liked her. She was sociable, smiling, and friendly. They decided to hire her as a part-time nanny, She came to their home after lunch and helped with the children until the evening. However, the entire story about the resume was fabricated. Yoselin has no experience with childcare, unlike her sister, Celia. However, she needed a good job, and when an opportunity arose to earn a decent salary of $500 a week, Celia helped her create a resume. Despite her lack of experience, but Yoselin excelled in the job. She got along well with the children, and there were no issues for about 2 years. Unfortunately, the Krim family could not have anticipated the tragedy that followed. Yoselin appeared to be a kind and trustworthy woman, and the Krims believed their children were completely safe with her. This gave Marina free time to teach at a drawing school, her hobby, and continue blogging. The nanny Yoselin treated the family's children as if they were her own, often joking that she had not one son, but 4 children. The children loved her in return, giving her drawings and becoming attached to her. The youngest son of the Krim family, Leo, couldn't even fall asleep without her. Marina was very cautious. She rarely left Yoselin alone with the children, she doing so only in cases of extreme necessity. Usually, Marina was always with the children, and Yoselin just assisted. Even when Marina left the house, she asked her relatives to keep an eye on Yoselin. According to Celia, Yoselin was happy with her job as a nanny. She earned a good salary for part-time work and received gifts, including expensive ones. Krim family even bought her plane tickets to the Dominican Republic so she can visit loved ones. They became so close to Yoselin that in February 2012, they all went on vacation together to the Dominican Republic. There, they met Yoselin's family, spent a night at her family's house, enjoyed the wonderful vacation, and gave her family many gifts. Krim family also helped Yoselin's grown-up son, Jesus, move to New York to be closer to his mother. They bought 17-year-old Jesus an iPad for school, let him stay with them, and paid him well just for walking their 2 dogs. Although he had graduated from school in his home country, but Jesus had to repeat the 11th grade in the US under a different American program at a regular school. When he wasn't accepted, Yoselin had to arrange for him to attend a private school, which was expensive for her. She was very protective of her son and didn't let him go outside unless necessary. She made him hide under the bed during loud noises, as he did in childhood, and when he went to school, she would to follow him secretly to ensure nothing happened to him. In April 2012, Yoselin faced difficulties when she was evicted from the Bronx apartment she shared with her son. She had invested heavily in the housing, but the landlord evicted them. She was forced to move back in with her 3 sisters and their families, totaling 6 more people. The living situation was overcrowded and cramped. Yoselin asked the Krim family for a raise so she could afford separate housing. They agreed to pay her more if she also cleaned their house for 5 hours a week. She accepted, but for the first time in a long time, she again had financial difficulties because she had to raise her son and pay the rent alone. Despite a decent income, her expenses were still too high. This situation stressed Yoselin to sell jewelry and cosmetics to neighbors for extra money. Initially, she was successful, but when she gave cosmetics to a friend to sell, the friend disappeared without paying her back. This left she with a significant debt, forcing her to take on more work. She started cooking rice and preparing chicken dishes to sell. The extra workload exhausted her. She complained to her loved ones, saying the Krim family should pay her to babysit, not to clean and do housework. She felt that their family was so rich, they should just give her a raise without additional duties, and she was angry with them. Marina knew that Yoselin needed money and began introducing her to friends and acquaintances to work as a nanny. When new clients started reaching out, Yoselin became upset with Marina. She felt that taking on more work would leave her with less time to spend with her son. Her frustration grew daily. During these months, she lost a lot of weight and appeared tired and worn out. Once a cheerful and happy woman, she became tired and disillusioned with life. She began to have hallucinations, had trouble sleeping. Celia noticed that she started praying frequently at home, reading religious magazines because she saw demons, and began visiting a psychologist. But she hid all this from the Krim family, fearing she might lose her good job. On October 25, 2012, Yoselin arrived at the Krim family's house at 3 p.m. Marina met Yoselin's at the door, as she was leaving with Nessie for a swimming lesson. She instructed Yoselin to pick up Lucia from school and take Lucia's to ballet. Then Yoselin had to go home to put Leo to bed. In the end, they planned to meet at Lucia's ballet class and return home together. Yoselin and Leo picked up Lucia from school as planned but did not take Lucia to ballet lessons. Instead, they went for a walk in the park, ate ice cream, and then returned home. That day, Yoselin first spoke to the janitor of the apartment building where the Krim family lived. She asked if Marina had returned home, but the concierge said no. Then, she, Lucia and Leo took the elevator to the apartment and ran into a neighbor. Just half an hour later, a tragedy occurred. Around 5 p.m., Marina and Nessie went to Lucia's ballet class to pick up Lucia. Little girl was supposed to be there with Yoselin. However, Marina found out that little girl did not come to class. Concerned, Marina rushed back to her Upper West Side apartment in New York. On the way, she tried calling Yoselin, but Yoselin didn't answer. Marina initially thought no one was home and that Yoselin might be out with the children in the park. She went to the concierge to ask if he had seen Yoselin and the children. The concierge told her that they had recently returned to the building and they may be in the apartment. Marina and Nessie went back to the apartment and began to search each room. When Marina entered the bathroom, she was met with a horrific sight. Her two children, Lucia and Leo, lay lifeless on the floor, covered in blood, and Yoselin sitting next to them holding a bloody kitchen knife. Seeing Marina's reaction, Yoselin stabbed herself in the throat twice. Marina got scared. She rushed out of the apartment with Nessie, screaming. The neighbors heard Marina's heart-wrenching screams, and the building security calmed her down before calling 911 and emergency services. When the New York Police Department officers arrived, they found a horrific scene in the Krim family's apartment. Two small children, Lucia and Leo, lay in the bathtub with knife wounds, Marina beside them, overcome with grief and horror. The nanny Yoselin lay on the floor, bleeding and in critical condition. Doctors found Yoselin, Lucia, and Leo still alive and rushed them to the hospital. Tragically, Lucia and Leo did not survive. They were pronounced dead on arrival. Lucia was 6 years old, and her brother Leo was 2 years old. The nanny, 50 years old Yoselin Ortega, survived. She was put into a coma and underwent surgery. She had cut her hands and neck with such force that she broke her cervical vertebrae. Marina was in shock and unable to provide any information to the police, so they gave her a sedative. Her husband, Kevin, who was returning from a business trip, received a frantic voicemail from Marina, but couldn't understand what she was saying. He only knew that something was wrong with the children. When he arrived at the airport, police met him and delivered the devastating news. He fainted and was given first aid before being taken to the hospital to be with Marina. They were overcome with grief and struggled to comprehend how their nanny, who had been caring for their children for 2 years and was considered a member of the family, could commit such a heinous act. A neighbor reported seeing Yoselin with Lucia and Leo in the elevator just 30 minutes before the tragedy. Lucia and Leo seemed happy and playful, while Yoselin appeared emotionless and detached. However, the neighbor didn't think much of it, as Yoselin had behaved similarly in the past. Other nannies in the area, who often helped each other, barely knew Yoselin, as Yoselin was very withdrawn and didn't communicate with anyone. They considered her strange. The autopsy revealed Lucia and Leo suffered a horrific death, with nearly beheaded bodies. Lucia suffered more than 30 stab wounds and cuts, indicating that little girl had fought fiercely for her life, leading to severe blood loss. Her younger brother, Leo, had 5 stab wounds to the neck, and his throat was cut from behind. There was no doubt Jocelyn was responsible for the murder. Detectives began to investigate her background in detail. Jocelyn was hospitalized for a week and she was saved. When she regained consciousness, she could only communicate through gestures. She only asked about her family, but she said nothing about the murdered children or the Krim family. Later, when Jocelyn could speak, detectives interviewed her on November 3rd. She did not confess to the murder, but she expressed feelings of resentment towards Krim's family because they often reprimanded her. She refused to have a lawyer during the interrogation. She said she was in the bathroom at the time of the incident, and she denied responsibility for causing the injuries that led to the deaths of Lucia, 6, and Leo, 2. In addition, she said that the children's mother, Marina, knew why this happened. On November 13th, Jocelyn Ortega was charged with the first-degree murder of the children, but she denied her guilt and hired a lawyer. As New York had abolished the death penalty, so she faced life imprisonment. Jocelyn was given a psychiatric examination and psychiatrists found her to be sane and able to appear in court. During the proceedings, Jocelyn declined a plea bargain from the prosecution, which offered her a 30-year sentence in exchange for a guilty plea, allowing her potential release at around 80 years of age. However, she chose not to explain the incident and motives behind the crime, opting instead to be represented by a lawyer. The lawyer argued that her actions were due to her mental illnesses. She broke down and lost control when she harmed Lucia and Leo. 2 psychiatrists for Jocelyn testified that she heard voices, including satanic ones, telling her to harm herself and the children. They stated that she had experienced hallucinations since her teenage years in the Dominican Republic, but her condition had not been diagnosed or treated. Before she was arrested for murder, several family members and friends noted that Jocelyn's behavior had changed in the weeks leading up to the crime. She said she saw demons and shadows of people haunting her, she frequently cried, and prayed for the demons to leave her alone. Shortly before the murders, she threw pots and pans at the pool and kitchen walls to drown out the voices in her head, and sometimes banged her head against the wall to drive the demons away. Jocelyn's sisters blamed the Krim family for the tragedy, accusing them of exploiting she, not allowing her adequate rest, failing to notice signs of mental illness, and leaving her alone with the children. In court, a psychotherapist who had seen Jocelyn testified that he did not find any signs of mental disorder in her, only anxiety and mild depression due to concerns about her son. A recording of her conversation with a psychologist was played, confirming that she did not mention hearing voices or experiencing other symptoms of psychosis. The possibility of Jocelyn having a mental illness was dismissed. A psychiatrist, called by the prosecution, assumed she was angry and was faking psychosis. A relative of Jocelyn mentioned that she envied the Krim family because they could provide for their children in ways she could not, and she had to send her son to live with his grandparents when he was only 4 years old. The defense argued that tensions had arisen between Jocelyn and the Krim family. Besides taking care of the kids, she was also paid to clean their apartment and do odd jobs, which she was reluctant to do due to an allergy to cleaning products. She also disliked being asked by Marina to work for other families. On one occasion, Marina asks her to look after another family's child, while their nanny is on sick leave. She agreed, but the next day she refused to go to the other family. Marina confronted her about this near the school, in front of strangers, making she feel uncomfortable. Afterward, she sat in the park and cried. She believed that Marina intended to humiliate her in front of others. Tensions between the Krim and Jocelyn continued to rise. They were unhappy with her work in the weeks leading up to the murder and had warned her that if she did not improve her performance, she would have to find another job. In particular, Marina felt that she did not spend enough time interacting with the children and fed them unhealthy food. The day before the murder, Marina did not say goodbye to she, which made she very angry and upset. Jocelyn was upset with the Krim family due to a constant lack of money. She also disliked the frequently changing work schedule, which sometimes caused her to miss doctor's appointments. Prolonged dissatisfaction, along with mental disorder, made she increasingly angry, something she could not control. Without realizing what she was doing, she committed murder, her lawyer said. However, the prosecutor argued that the crime was carefully planned in advance. The day before the crime, Jocelyn returned home, took medicine for a headache, talked to her sister Celia, and asked her to care for Jesus as if little boy were her own son. Celia agreed without understanding what Jocelyn meant. On the day of the murders, Jocelyn ensured her son got to school safely and said goodbye to little boy before heading to work. She left Celia an envelope containing important personal documents such as her passport, driver's license, bank cards, insurance certificate, and some cash. She also attached a paper bag with family memorabilia, photographs, and her jewelry to her son's room door. The prosecutor believed this was her way of saying goodbye to her family, she knowing she wouldn't return. She also deliberately did not take Lucia to ballet lessons. The prosecution argued that Jesus' move to the United States triggered her, increased her anxiety, depression, and guilt, so her resentment toward the Krim family also increased. On April 18, 2018, the jury found Jocelyn Ortegas guilty of first-degree child murder. The jury describing her actions as pure evil and dismissing the defense's argument that she wasn't responsible due to mental illness. Although the judge acknowledged that her mental illness influenced her actions that day, he expressed regret that she nor had secured the psychiatric treatment she needed. However, he stressed that planning a crime on that day had been meticulous. Before the court handed down its verdict, Marina said that Jocelyn ended up destroying her own family. At this point, Marina broke into tears, and Jocelyn shamefully lowered her head. Despite the terrible tragedy, the Krim family remained strong. They went on to have 2 more children's sons named Felix and Nose. Kevin requested the judge impose the maximum penalty on Jocelyn to ensure she would never leave prison. He observed no remorse from her and believed she should just spend the rest of her life in prison. The prosecutor echoed Kevin's request, urging the judge to sentence her to life imprisonment without parole. He argued that Jocelyn not only brutally killed Lucia and Leo, and she didn't even regret her actions. She attempted to end her own life to escape responsibility for her actions, but her plan did not succeed. Jocelyn's lawyer requested leniency from the judge during sentencing. She argued that the jury reached this decision because they were influenced by Marina's emotional state, not based on an objective assessment of the evidence. Ultimately, the judge ruled in favor of the prosecution. On May 14, 2018, Jocelyn Ortega, aged 55, received the maximum sentence of life imprisonment without parole. However, she remained composed for most of the trial. The case was particularly difficult when it involved the children, which moved many to tears, but Jocelyn did not cry. When witnesses described the kindness of the Krim family towards her, she shook her head in disagreement. However, she began to cry when the verdict was announced. After the verdict, Jocelyn expressed her regret in Spanish, saying she very sorry about everything that happened and asked for forgiveness from God, Marina, and Kevin. During the trial, it was disclosed that the Krim family had been misled by false claims of Jocelyn's experience as a nanny. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Honey and Barry Sherman. The murder of Honey and Barry Sherman is one of the most baffling crimes in history. On a cold December morning, Canadian billionaire businessman Barry and his wife Honey were found dead in their mansion, hanging from a railing near their indoor pool. The shocking discovery led to an investigation that revealed unexpected twists and turns. Barry Sherman was born in 1942 in Toronto, Canada. His father ran a small business but passed away from heart failure when Barry was just 10 years old. From a young age, Barry demonstrated exceptional intelligence, setting him apart from his peers. In the early 1960s, he studied engineering at the University of Toronto. During the summer, he worked part-time as a truck driver, delivering drugs for the pharmaceutical company Empire, which was owned by his uncle, Louis Winter. Barry later earned his PhD and BA in astrophysics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1967. In his unfinished autobiography, Barry said that these early years were crucial in shaping his future. His uncle, Louis Winter, a pharmaceutical company owner, and his wife Beverly both died young, just 17 days apart, in 1965. Louis suffered from psychosis, while Beverly battled leukemia, leaving behind 4 young sons. Initially, Barry occasionally visited his young cousins, but eventually lost contact with them. At that time, Barry was only 22 years old, but he confidently declared to the real estate manager at the time that he wanted to become the head of the Empire Pharmaceutical Company. He offered $3,000 and a car. Barry demanded a response within 24 hours or he would withdraw his offer. The trustee rejected his bold proposal, but Barry was not deterred. 2 years after graduation, he made another attempt to gain control of the company, this time proposing a partnership with a formal offer of $450,000. The trustee considered selling the company, but wanted to ensure that Louis's 4 sons would be protected in the deal. However, Barry was only willing to put together a written agreement that would allow his cousins to work at Empire when they turned 21 and purchase up to a 5% stake when they turned 23, as long as he still owned the business. If he sold the company, the agreement would be void. Despite their concerns, the deal went ahead, but protections for Louis's sons were not included in the final agreement. Barry ultimately sold the company for nearly $2 million, and after gaining experience from this venture, Barry was ready to start his next venture, starting his own pharmaceutical company, Texas. He founded the company in 1974 as a conglomerate that would compete with global market leaders such as Pfizer and Bayer. The company produced generic drugs, which are essentially replicas of well-known medications. Barry portrayed himself as a champion for consumers, boldly suing major pharmaceutical companies to make medications affordable for patients in need. Barry married Honey in 1971. They met in 1970 when Honey was volunteering at a local hospital, raising funds for charities and participating in Toronto's Jewish community. Helping others was very important to her since she was born in an Austrian displaced persons camp, and her parents survived the Holocaust. Years later, Barry decided to help his cousins, Louis's children, after discovering that they had struggled with drug problems as teenagers. After 16 years of separation, Barry reconnected with them, providing them with a car, a house, and financial support. However, Barry's wife, Honey, was not happy with this new relationship. She frequently questioned Barry about what his cousins asked for and how much money he gave them. This frustration caused her to scold Kerry Winter, causing him to leave. Why was Barry so generous to his cousins? Kerry started to wonder if there was a hidden motive behind Barry's help. One day, Kerry confronted Barry and directly asked how he acquired their father's business. Barry dodged the question, but Kerry persisted. He began searching through family archives and discovered an agreement that shocked him, making him believe that Barry had deceived their family. Barry had never mentioned it to him or to the other brothers. Kerry later called Barry to express his concerns, and Barry confirmed the truth of Kerry's findings. This revelation caused a lasting rift between them and Barry. Barry was actively involved in charity work alongside his wife, Honey. They donated over $50 million, including significant contributions to the Jewish community and the Toronto Hospital, as well as supplies to areas affected by disasters. His company employed around 11,000 people and operated in over 100 countries worldwide. The couple had 4 adult children and several grandchildren. In 2017, they decided to sell their mansion, which was over 1,100 square meters, for nearly $7 million Canadian dollars. They intended to build their dream home closer to downtown Toronto, but those plans never materialized. At 8:30 a.m. on December 15, 2017, a cleaning crew entered the couple's home and began cleaning the house before it was put on sale. Around 10 a.m., 2 real estate agents arrived at the house with potential buyers to inspect the property. They first inspected the main levels of the house and then went to the basement, where the swimming pool was located. A real estate agent entered the pool area first and saw the bodies of Barry, 75, and Honey, 70. After realizing they were dead, she quickly ordered the buyers to leave, telling them that the owner was supposed to be doing yoga. Before taking the potential clients upstairs to view the home, the employee asked the maid to check the basement and see what was going on. The maid went down into the basement, approached the couple, and found them cold. She returned a few minutes later and informed the employee of her findings. The employee then said goodbye to the clients and went downstairs to confirm that Barry and Honey were indeed dead before calling the police. When police paramedics arrived, they confirmed that the couple were dead. Barry and Honey had been dead for approximately 36 hours at the time of discovery. Barry was discovered sitting on the right side with his legs crossed and his glasses correctly positioned on his face. He had some neck wounds, but no other injuries were found on his body. Honey had a bruise on her face, and Barry was located near the garage door. On the other side of the garage, there was vodka, which they often kept there, and one of the room's windows was opened about 15 centimeters for ventilation because the room had recently been painted. Both Barry and Honey had leather straps tightly wrapped around their necks, which were attached to stainless steel pool railings installed about a meter above the floor. The cause of death for both was determined to be strangulation. Initially, the police suspected that the couple had chosen to end their lives, but there seemed to be no reason for such a tragic decision. They were wealthy, had a thriving business, and were in love. A family member mentioned that Barry had complained of fatigue, blaming it on long hours of work and poor nutrition. However, Barry had never shown any signs of depression, making it difficult to believe that he would take such drastic action. Honey had recently been treated for throat cancer and was battling severe arthritis, having had knee and hip replacements. Despite her health problems, she never complained, was sociable and friendly, always maintained a positive attitude, and showed no signs of end her own life tendencies. After a detailed examination of the crime scene, the police began to investigate the possibility that the husband killed Honey before taking his own life. They identified the victim as Honey based on injuries to her face. Both victims had marks on their wrists indicating their hands had been bound together. Autopsies found no traces of illegal substances or alcohol that could have contributed to their deaths. In Barry's basement, there is a sculpture made entirely from trash. The artist deliberately used discarded materials to create this piece, which depicts 2 human figures. After the bodies were discovered, some speculated that the killer may have been inspired by this sculpture, as the bodies were placed in similar positions. The day after the bodies were found, some unnamed police officers told the media that Barry had strangled his wife, Honey, before taking end your life. This was never verified and was quickly dismissed by family members, who said it was untrue, especially given the close relationship between the couple. Within 72 hours of the incident, their 4 adult children hired prominent criminal defense attorney Brian Greenspan. He assembled a team to conduct an independent investigation, including detectives and an expert who performed a second autopsy on the victims. They believe that Barry and Honey were murdered. The couple had died just a few days before they were scheduled to leave for a vacation at their home in Palm Beach, Florida. Honey had organized a 4-week trip that was meant to begin on December 18th. Barry was meant to join Honey a week later on the 25th. Unlike Honey, he wasn't in a rush. Work took priority over a vacation in Florida. When examining the couple's position when they died, they were sitting on the floor, their backs to the pool, their jackets thrown back. The glasses on the bar appeared to have been adjusted by someone, raising questions, as did the Barry's crossed legs. It appeared that someone had assisted them in their final moments. Barry's family released a statement calling on the police to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation into the deaths and asking the media to stop speculating about the cause. During this time, a serial killer was also active in Toronto, diverting police resources to catch him. As a result, the investigation into Barry and Honey's case was not a priority. The couple's autopsies were performed by a rookie forensic expert who had never worked on such a complex case before and was unable to provide any conclusive answers. However, after Bruce McArthur was arrested, police began working on Barry's case and interviewed around 240 people. With such a large group, it seemed like the case would be solved quickly. Unfortunately, that was not to be. The latest known events before the couple's death were remarkable. On December 12, 2017, Honey was absent from a charity board meeting, which was unusual for her as she had never been absent from such meetings before. The following day, December 13th, Barry and Honey met at Apotex's headquarters to discuss plans for their new home. Barry often made work calls at night because he had trouble sleeping, which changed his working hours. However, on the evening of December 13th, he did not make a phone call, which was unusual for him. Barry was scheduled to appear at the Apotex office on December 14th, but he did not show up or notify anyone of his absence, which is highly unusual. Toronto police, who have been criticized by Barry's family for their previous handling of the case, have refused to make any public statements. Police have not been looking for a suspect because there was no evidence of a forced entry into the home or any signs of outsiders, prompting theories that people close to them were involved. An independent investigation revealed that Barry's cousins were suspects. They were unhappy that Barry had lied to them and left them without money. For 10 years, they had been involved in a lawsuit over a portion of Barry's pharmaceutical fortune. They argued that Barry had founded his pharmaceutical company at the expense of his father's company, Empire, and they demanded their share of Apotex. Barry denied all allegations and fought tooth and nail, insisting that his cousins return the millions of dollars he had given them. Finally, in the 1980s, Barry did everything he could to support them. On September 15, 2017, 3 months earlier, Barry and Honey were found dead, and an Ontario judge ruled in Barry's favor, dismissing the cousins' claims and describing their lawsuit as unrealistic and overly ambitious. On December 6, just a week before Barry was last seen alive, a judge ordered Barry's cousins to pay $300,000 in attorney fees. Barry was unhappy with the amount, as he was asking for nearly $1 million. After the ruling, Barry brought in his attorneys to appeal the decision. They filed their appeal the day after his funeral. Due to the ongoing conflict with the cousins, many began to suspect their involvement in the couple's murder. One of the cousins, Kerry Winter, even mentioned in an interview that he had fantasized about ambushing Barry at work and harming him. Kerry was not surprised by the tragedy that occurred. He believed that Barry had killed his wife, Honey, and then taken his own life. In several interviews, Kerry mentioned that years ago, Barry approached him with a disturbing request. Barry is said to have told Kerry that he wanted Kerry to do him a favor and kill his wife. Kerry responded in disbelief, "Are you serious, Barry?" Barry said, "Yes, He hated her. Carey insisted that he would not commit such an act but mentioned that he might know people who could. However, when Carey was about to help Barry out of gratitude for his past support, Barry suddenly changed his mind and rejected the idea. Barry's family later strongly denied Carey's claims, asserting that Barry would never ask his cousin to do something so extreme, as he loved Honey very much and would never think of harming her. Carey claimed that he had nothing to do with the murder. He admitted that he felt great contempt and hatred for Barry, because Barry hurt him and disrespected his father. Carey had every reason to dislike Barry, but he had nothing to do with Barry's death. Carey mentioned that on the day of the murder, he had been at work all day. In the evening, he attended a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, then returned home as usual, watched a movie, ate, and went to bed. The next morning, he went to work as usual. However, since he lived alone, no one could verify his statement. 3 years later, in November 2020, police announced that they had a suspect, but just 2 days later, they announced that there may be multiple suspects. There has been no further clarification since. A year later, in December 2021, police released surveillance footage near Barry's home. The videos showed a person wearing dark clothing walking on the sidewalk near Barry and Honey's home. Police observed that the person had an unusual gait, possibly due to walking in the snow. The time of the murder coincided with the time this stranger was seen walking toward the couple's home. The man in the footage was never identified because his face and identifying features were not visible. The only detail identified from the surveillance camera footage was his height, estimated to be around 170 to 180 centimeters. Police hoped that by sharing the video with the public, someone might recognize the man, but no one came forward to help police identify the suspect. According to police, Honey arrived home in her Lexus at around 8:30 p.m. on December 13th. She parked as usual and entered the kitchen through the laundry room door. The intruders may have entered the home. Honey then went into the bathroom, where she was either attacked or fled after the attack began. This would explain why her phone was found in the bathroom by a maid. Honey was beaten and strangled on the first floor before her body was moved to the basement. An independent medical examiner determined that Honey's facial injuries occurred as a result of being dragged down the stairs to the pool, but it was never determined which of the 2 staircases in the home was used. One theory is that the attacker encountered Honey and attacked her on the street, then used her keys to get into the house. This would explain why there were no signs of entry. Another possibility is that he entered through an open window or unlocked door. Barry left Apotex around 8:30 p.m. in his Mustang. After reaching home, he parked in the garage, which provided him access to the house through 2 doors. It's likely he used the door near the stairs, where he was attacked. This could clarify why his documents and gloves were discovered in the garage area. The killers placed the victims' bodies near the basement pool. They wrapped belts around their necks, draped jackets over their shoulders, and left glasses on the bar to make it look like to end one's own life. It was discovered that the leather belts used were taken from the victims' homes. This suggests that the criminals intended to fool the investigation into the fact that no outsiders were involved. And Barry was behind the setup. It was learned through investigation that Barry, despite keeping a tight rein on his wife's spending, but had generously given millions of dollars to his children. Although he was reluctant to spend money on himself or his wife, he was more than willing to financially support his children. Honey had the means to travel and shop. She could easily spend large amounts on home repairs and other essentials. However, she and her husband preferred not to spend much money. Before her death, Honey mentioned to relatives that her husband wanted to buy her an expensive gift, but she didn't know what it would be. Despite Barry's considerable wealth, he preferred to drive everyday cars. He owned a Mustang, and the couple never owned the luxury cars typically flaunted by billionaires. For his 50th birthday, Honey bought Barry a sports car and presented it to him in front of close family, but he was unhappy with the gift and insisted that she return it because he disliked extravagance. The Barry did not flaunt their wealth. Their home was modest for billionaires, and they were careful with their spending. They led a relatively simple lifestyle, often flying economy class. Honey enjoyed a few luxuries typical of the upper middle class, like beautiful jewelry, a Lexus SUV, and shopping trips in New York. In November 2016, she bought a valuable piece of land in the upscale Forest Hill neighborhood, which was registered in her name. They planned to demolish the existing house and a new one. The plans included a large brick and stone residence with an elevator and the outdoor pool that Barry promised her, complete with a retractable skylight and a separate pool. The building plans received approval on June 28, just under 6 months before the murder. Barry did not really want to move to a new home. He was happy with their current home but made the decision based on Honey's wishes. On November 27, 2017, just 2 weeks before the tragedy, their home was put up for sale and described as a modern architectural masterpiece. It is unclear why the Barry family chose to sell their home when construction on the new home had not even begun. In the final weeks of Honey's life, she was busy with her charity work while also overseeing the home project. In late November, she received the Senate Medal for 150th Anniversary Volunteer Service Award, presented by her close friend, Senator from. She was recognized as the best charity worker and fundraiser in Toronto. Barry supported Honey throughout their 46 years of marriage. The couple demonstrated a striking contrast. Honey was outgoing, cheerful, and social, while Barry preferred a more reserved and introverted approach, often uninterested in small talk. Although Honey did not have a formal job, she served as an exceptional ambassador for Apotex. Honey excelled at building connections with influential people through her charm and determination to assist others. In her final days, friends and family noted that Barry and Honey appeared happy and in good spirits, showing no signs of being threatened or in danger. Barry frequently filed lawsuits against competitors and the government. Over the course of his career, he initiated approximately 1,200 lawsuits, including 83 against Health Canada, using these actions as leverage. His substantial donations to various foundations helped him gain support from politicians. Barry was known as the most active defendant in Canada. Those close to him said that his love of litigation stemmed not from a desire for money, but from a need for validation and a determination to win at all costs. Another theory that may have something to do with the couple's deaths is Barry's questionable business practices. He was known to be mysterious and owed around $1 billion to various companies, which he never intended to repay. His investments outside of Apotex were large and obscure, including a failed casino venture, a money-losing gold mine, a bankrupt jewelry business, and an investment in a non-existent yacht. He also financed B-movies featuring gangsters and vampires and worked with people who were later convicted of fraud. Barry amassed a large fortune through unethical means. While some considered him generous and kind, many others criticized his character, claiming that he lacked positive qualities. Given his character, many people would have wanted to harm him. There were suspicions about his business partners at Apotex who may have had motives related to a business dispute, but no solid evidence has been presented. In the final months of his life, Barry suffered a setback. In January 2017, Apotex sued a former employee, accusing him of stealing drug formulas to start his own pharmaceutical company in Pakistan. A few months later, a key executive at Apotex was accused of espionage by its biggest competitor, an Israeli company, implying that a former female employee had leaked confidential information to her boyfriend at Apotex. In the weeks leading up to his death, Barry continued to work hard, always focused on his business. Barry suffered from insomnia and was constantly busy with calculations and planning. He even wanted to discuss business matters while on vacation. Barry was a man who trusted his instincts and was willing to take risks. He was a popular figure in society, and many people came to him for financial help. Police now believe that Barry's murders may have been related to his personality and lifestyle. He often made life difficult for others and was quick to sue anyone. The police suspect that the killer was likely an unknown person who either visited Barry's home or hired a hitman. Honey was not the intended target. She became an accidental victim because she encountered the criminal at the murder scene. After the murder, the unknown criminal remained in the house with the bodies for an extended period, indicating he was familiar with the family's daily routine and had ample time to carry out his actions without being disturbed. He meticulously cleaned up any evidence of his presence and positioned the bodies to resemble the unusual garbage sculpture found in the house. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau attended the funeral of the Sherman couple and posthumously awarded Barry one of the nation's highest civilian honors. Approximately 6,500 people attended the funeral. An independent investigation team, led by a lawyer and supported by the victims' families, offered a $35 million reward for information that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator, but this effort was unsuccessful. The lawyers discovered that the police failed to thoroughly examine the crime scene. Notably, they found jewelry on the driveway near the house that did not belong to the victims. But the police overlooked it and may have missed other crucial evidence that could have been lost over time. Evidence may have been destroyed by real estate staff and buyers who inspected the house, as well as cleaning crews who were present at the time. The police received a total of 343 tips from the legal team, but none of them led to the identification of the criminal. The last tip came on July 2, 2019. For unknown reasons, the legal team did not provide any information for more than a year, possibly due to a lack of new leads. In February 2019, the murdered couple's home was returned to their family. The couple's children then filed a petition to demolish the house, saying it was heartbreaking to see the house in its current state and that no one would want to buy it. As a result, the house was demolished. After the house was demolished, the family aimed to clean up the area, fill in the pool, and put the land up for sale. It is unclear if it has been sold yet. Barry has faced numerous death threats, including from his competitors. Notably, Barry had no protection whatsoever. Every evening, he would enter the office and get into his car, making it easy for someone to attack him. To this day, the case remains unsolved, with only 2 investigators still working on it. They are looking at all potential suspects from the large list of defendants in related lawsuits and are also looking into the company's financial records and charity documents. However, some believe that influential figures in society are involved, which could mean the case will never be solved. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Roni Reuter. On the morning of Thursday, October 4, 2007, neighbors of Roni heard heart-wrenching screams and loud bangs coming from her apartment. Alarmed, they called 911 and requested authorities to investigate. The police arrived immediately, and when no one came to open the door, they forced their way inside. In the kitchen, they found a woman lying face down, wearing body armor, with wounds to her head, arms, and pregnant belly. It appeared she had tried to shield her unborn child by covering her stomach with her hands, causing both her hands and stomach to be injured. There were 2 wounds to her abdomen, indicating that the baby was the main target of the attack. The attacker then inflicted injuries to the back of her head. Tragically, both she and her unborn child were dead. The brutality of the crime left the police deeply shaken, questioning who could commit such a horrific act against a pregnant woman. A forensic investigation uncovered a spent 9mm cartridge case and 5 unused cartridges near the body. There were no signs of forced entry, robbery, or sexual assault, ruling out a random attack or burglary. This led investigators to believe the murder was personal and premeditated. It seems that Roni has a dangerous enemy who has harmed her, Police theorized that the attacker attacked Roni as she was preparing to leave the apartment to go to work, ambushing her when she opened the door. Detectives interviewed her neighbors, hoping to find witnesses or valuable leads. The neighbors reported hearing sounds resembling gunshots, leading authorities to suspect the killer used a silenced weapon. A neighbor reported seeing a skinny African-American teenager wearing a hooded sweatshirt, walking up the stairs to Roni's door at around 7:00 a.m., shortly before the incident. Later, another neighbor saw this person running out of the house, get into a small black car, and drive away from the parking lot. Police reviewed surveillance footage from cameras near the house. The footage captured a black car, likely a Volkswagen, arriving at 7:04 a.m. and leaving at 7:55 a.m., aligning with the time frame of the murder. However, the driver of the car has not yet been identified. Inside Roni's purse, investigators discovered a mysterious letter. The letter referenced Sean, the father of her unborn child, and claimed to have uncovered details about him. It alleged that Sean had romantic relationships with women from various countries, listing the names and phone numbers of 16 women he had affairs with. The letter also mentioned Roni's pregnancy, stating that Sean did not want the baby. Detectives suspected the murder was linked to Roni's pregnancy and believed Sean might have crucial information. The teenager seen near the house became the primary suspect, and both he and the black car were placed on a wanted list. Meanwhile, investigators began looking into Roni's social relationship to determine if she had any enemies. She was born in the small town of Potosi, Wisconsin. She met Sean at a charity event in Wisconsin, and the two quickly fell in love. After completing college, she moved to Deerfield, Illinois, a wealthy Chicago suburb with a population of 20,000. At the time of the murder, Roni was 42 years old, lived alone in her condominium. She was 7 months pregnant, eagerly preparing for the arrival of her first child, a baby girl she planned to name Skylar. The father of her child was Sean, 45, her partner of 17 years. Despite dating for many years, they did not marry or live together. Sean, a former Chicago Bears football player, was questioned by detectives for 10 hours. He shared how much he loved Roni and was looking forward to their child's birth. Roni deeply loved him, but Sean's feelings were more complex. He admitted to detectives that he had multiple affairs, which strained their relationship. He said that Roni knew about his infidelity, and it had caused her to grow distant from him. Despite this, he insisted he was excited to become a father. He appeared heartbroken over the tragic deaths of Roni and their unborn baby, and his emotions seemed genuine. Additionally, his strong, athletic build did not match the description of the thin teenager a neighbor claimed to have seen. Sean told the police that he had overslept that morning, he waking up at 9:15 a.m. and then went to a barbershop for a haircut. This alibi was confirmed by the barbershop administrator. However, the barbershop was close to Roni's house, just a 10-minute walk from her home, which made the detectives suspicious. They considered the possibility that Sean might have killed Roni or orchestrated the crime by hiring someone else. Despite his alibi, investigators did not eliminate him as a suspect and continued looking into his potential involvement. They questioned Sean's friends to evaluate whether he was capable of murder, his relationship with Roni, and whether he truly wanted the child. Sean's close friends have strenuously denied that he committed the crime, insisting that he was delighted to be a father, despite his relationships with other women. When detectives visited Sean's home for a follow-up interview, they discovered parenting books and baby items, indicating that he was preparing for fatherhood. During the interview, police asked who he thought might be responsible for the crime. He listed 16 women he had recently been involved with, and emphasized one name in particular, Monika Kurowska. Sean said that Monika, a fitness model from Poland, was someone he had dated while living in Europe. Their relationship ended a year ago, but Monika couldn't accept the breakup and began stalking him. She traveled to the United States and started following him. One night, She came to his apartment complex, ringing all the doors, including those of his neighbors and his own. When he stepped outside, he discovered a broken window and noticed Monica had blood on her hand. He found her behavior very worrying and dangerous, so he took out a restraining order against her. Sean suspects that Monica is the one who sent letters to Ronnie and his other lovers. These letters caused conflict between him and Ronnie. He suspects Monica because she follows him and knows all his secrets. In addition, the letters contain common errors in people who are just learning to speak English, like Monica. Even his mother received such a letter. Detectives became interested in Monica and eventually located her. During questioning, Monica denied any involvement in Ronnie's death, claiming she had an alibi. She was at work on the morning of the murder. The police confirmed her alibi. Monica shared a slightly different account of events. She admitted traveling to the USA to see Sean, hoping to win him back. Upon arriving at his home, she discovered him with another woman. In a fit of anger, she knocked hard on the window and accidentally broke it. Following this incident, she ended her relationship with Sean and claimed it was the last time she saw him. She also denied sending letters to Ronnie or Sean's mother, but the police remained skeptical of her story and continued to view her as a suspect. Despite their efforts, the investigation stalled. They suspect both Sean and Monica, as each had a motive to harm Ronnie, but both had alibis. No other suspects emerged. Then, the case took an unexpected turn. Police continued to question all of Ronnie and Sean's relatives. During the investigation, an acquaintance of theirs expressed suspicions about Marnie Yang, who was said to be obsessed with Sean. Investigators learned that Marnie had been in a relationship with Sean. The two had met 6 years earlier at a Chicago Bears convention, and Sean later reached out to her for help with real estate. Marnie, a realtor, had facilitated several real estate transactions for him. Marnie, single mother of 3 children, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, including as a realtor, a waitress, and even photographer. Over time, she grew close to Sean, and their relationship continued up until Ronnie's murder. It was later revealed that they had slept together the day before the crime. This led investigators to scrutinize Marnie more closely. After speaking with her family and friends, they concluded that Marnie was obsessed with Sean. She viewed him as her possession and wouldn't leave him alone. When she discovered he had other relationships, she became furious. Her jealousy drove her to want he all to herself, believing he should belong only to her. She calls him her boyfriend, despite the fact that their relationship was short and fleeting. Detectives questioned Marnie, but she firmly denied any involvement in the crime. Despite this, she was unable to provide an alibi for the time of the murder. She claimed she was at home with her children, but the lack of evidence to support this made her the primary suspect. Detectives believe Marnie fits the description of the person they are looking for. With her petite build, she could easily be mistaken for a teenager if she was wearing a sweatshirt and hood. After obtaining a search warrant for the home, police discovered several important clues. Upon examining Marnie's computer, they discovered she had access to Sean's email and had been secretly monitoring his messages. Among the emails, they found letters from Monica to Sean written in broken English. Marnie had mimicked Monica's writing style, including the grammatical errors. She sent anonymous letters to several women involved in Sean's life, such as Ronnie and his mother. These letters contained accusations about Sean's relationships, and investigators concluded that her intention was to frame Monica as the main suspect. However, her plan ultimately failed. The police discovered a broken computer hard drive and several bank statements in Marnie's trash. The bank statements showed that she had hired a private investigator to collect detailed information about all the women in Sean's life, including their full names and addresses. Inside Marnie's apartment, investigators found postal receipts with the addresses of Ronnie and several other women who had received anonymous letters. It also came to light that Marnie owned a gun. In September 2005, She was stopped at the airport for purchasing and transporting 2 pistols and 200 rounds of ammunition. Although she provided the required paperwork, the weapons were declared and shipped to Chicago. Marnie's former lover, who was a deputy sheriff, confirmed that she owned multiple pistols and was highly skilled at shooting. One of her guns was a 9mm pistol, the same type used to kill Roney, though this particular weapon was never located. Investigators also learned that Marnie had attempted to construct her own silencer. Her bank statements revealed she had purchased a book titled How to Make a Disposable Silencer, along with a hacksaw and other materials from Home Depot. It can be used to make a disposable muffler. Detectives questioned Marnie about the evidence they had gathered. She said she bought the book as a joke gift for a friend and insisted she did not own a 9mm pistol or have any involvement in the crime. Despite her denials, 40-year-old Marnie was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Roney and her unborn child, based on the circumstantial evidence. The prosecution argued that Marnie's actions were driven by jealousy. She was infatuated with Sean and obsessed with keeping him to herself. To eliminate her rival, she sent anonymous letters to other women in Sean's life, causing many of them to leave him. However, Roney stayed. Although upset with Sean, Roney maintained their relationship, especially since she was carrying his child, a child he deeply wanted. Marnie doesn't want this child to be born because she knows that it might cause Sean and Roney to become more attached. Marnie's primary objective was to kill both the child and Roney. During the trial, witnesses familiar with Marnie testified about her extreme obsession with Sean and the drastic actions she took for his attention. They revealed that she had hacked into Sean's email account, read his correspondence with other women, and angrily deleted messages before he could see them. When she discovered emails from a woman named Monica, she devised a plan. Marnie, in Monica's writing style, sent an article exposing Sean from an anonymous email account with many errors. She spent the entire day talking about Sean, causing her colleagues to become concerned about her behavior. At the trial, even Marnie's daughter, Emilian, testified against her mother. Emilian, 20, expressed concern about Marnie's erratic behavior and obsession with Sean, which seemed to have driven her out of control. Sean also took the stand, detailing his tumultuous relationship with Marnie. He described their relationship as intense, but revealed that Marnie became deeply upset when she found out about other women in his life. She tried every way to keep him, but the obsession in her actions eventually drove him away. Sean said he had been planning to break up with her. When asked whether he believed Marnie could have murdered Roney, who was pregnant, he hesitated and expressed doubt. The prosecution's key witness was Christy Passion, a friend of Marnie's. Christy testified that Marnie had been reading Sean's emails and frequently expressed dissatisfaction with his relationships with other women. In the summer of 2007, Marnie confided in Christy about her frustration over Sean dating other women and even mentioned plans to kill him. At the time, Christy took it as a joke and assumed she was simply venting. However, when Marnie discovered that Roney was pregnant, her focus shifted. She saw Roney as her main rival and became determined to eliminate Roney's at any cost. She told Christy about her plans to kill Roney instead of Sean, believing this would allow her and Sean to be happy together. Christy once again paid no attention to this, thinking it was just Marnie's imagination. Marnie later admits to Christy that she brought the weapon to Roney's apartment, but could not bring herself to do it. This confession makes Christy nervous, but Christy tries to comfort her and stop her from acting on her emotions. The day before the murder, she asked Christy to read her fortune to see if she would succeed in killing Roney. As an experienced tarot reader, Christy laid out the cards, and the one Marnie chose suggested success. Obsessed with the idea of killing Roney, the pregnant woman, Marnie ignored Christy's pleas and remained determined to carry out her plan. Christy later contacted Marnie, and they arranged to meet. During their conversation, Christy secretly wore a recording device, and the recording was later used as evidence. At this meeting, Marnie confessed to killing Ronnie, explaining the details of the crime. She revealed that she had disguised herself by wearing a wig, dark makeup, and gloves to avoid leaving any evidence. Marnie said she knocked on Ronnie's apartment door, and when Ronnie opened it, she drew her weapon and entered the house. She acted quickly, attacked Ronnie before Ronnie could scream. She admitted to being cautious, ensuring she didn't touch anything in the apartment and keeping her gloves on to avoid leaving traces. Marnie also described renting a black car, using a disposable phone, and then throw away the murder weapon, wig, gloves, and clothing in separate trash bins. She planned the murder meticulously so that it could not be detected, but Christie would testify against her. The recorded conversation became the prosecution's most compelling piece of evidence during the trial. The police investigation showed that Marnie's work computer had directions to Ronnie's house saved. They also confirmed that she rented a black Volkswagen on October 3. The vehicle's route was tracked from the rental location to Ronnie's apartment and back. However, the defense argued that there was no physical evidence that Marnie was at the scene, including DNA, fingerprints, or phone records. The case was based largely on circumstantial evidence in Christie's testimony. The defense wanted to discredit Christie by emphasizing her dubious background. They revealed that she had once claimed to be a psychic in the U.S. Army and said she was the sole survivor of a mission in the Middle East. However, it was later proven that she had fabricated her military service and had never even been in the Middle East. She had lied to enhance her qualifications for the role. The defense argued that Christie's testimony was unreliable and accused the police of falsely assigning blame to Marnie for the murder. The defense argued that there was no concrete evidence against Marnie, other than circumstantial evidence and recordings made under duress. The lawyer argued that Marnie confessed out of fear and in an attempt to protect her children, as her eldest son was under suspicion. Furthermore, an unidentified fingerprint was discovered on the door handle of Ronnie's apartment. The lawyer emphasized that the fingerprint did not belong to Marnie and that the police had failed to determine who it belonged to. The prosecutor acknowledged the existence of the fingerprint, confirming it was not in any database. However, they contended that the print could have been left by anyone passing by and was not necessarily linked to the crime. Marnie was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder for killing Ronnie Reuter and Ronnie's unborn child. She received 2 life sentences without parole. She and her lawyers opposed the sentence and filed an appeal, but it was denied. Marnie later claimed that she deliberately confessed to the murder to Christie to protect her son and stop people from bothering her. However, no one believed her explanation. Why would she include so many specific details about the murder if they weren't true? This makes no sense. The defense team argued that the black car seen on surveillance footage was not the Volkswagen that Marnie had rented. They also stated that a man had informed the police he had stolen Marnie's gun months before the murder, meaning she did not possess a gun at the time. Additionally, the murder weapon was never recovered at the crime scene. Fingerprints belonging to someone else were found, and they did not match Marnie's or any family member's fingerprints. The lawyer pointed out that male DNA was discovered on the cartridges at the crime scene, but it did not match Marnie's DNA and instead belonged to an unidentified man. The defense stressed that forensic analysis of the shooting angle indicated the attacker was taller than Marnie. Crucially, new CCTV footage from a hair salon showed Sean arriving for a haircut much later than he had claimed during police questioning. The footage revealed that he arrived at 10 a.m. on the day of Ronnie's murder, and she was killed before 8 a.m. Sean had previously told police he slept until 9:15 a.m. that morning, but evidence showed he had already sent a message to Ronnie and made several phone calls by 8:50 a.m. This video exposed inconsistencies in Sean's timeline, suggesting he could have had enough time to commit the murder. While the defense suspects Sean of being the perpetrator, they have not yet succeeded in having the case reopened. Marnie is still in prison and maintains her innocence. Sean, a former Chicago Bears player, played for the team for 11 seasons from 1984 to 1994, including their Super Bowl win in 1985. Having overcome his struggles in the United States, he now lives in London, United Kingdom, where he works as an NFL analyst for Sky Sports, a British sports channel, and regularly shares his expert analysis on weekly broadcasts. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Lydia Guardo. Raymond Guardo married Jacqueline in 1956. In the early years of their marriage, they had two children, a son named Bruno and a daughter named Nadia. At first, their family appeared to be typical and happy. However, after Nadia's birth, Raymond was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 5 years in prison. While Raymond was in prison, his wife Jacqueline began an affair with another man and became pregnant. When she was allowed to visit him in prison, she informed him that the child was not his. Despite this, he tolerated his wife's infidelity and expressed his desire to adopt the child. Soon, on November 13, 1960, the girl was born, named Lydia Guardo. Years later, Raymond was released from prison, but his relationship with his wife Jacqueline has worsened. She was left alone to care for their 3 children and seemed to have little affection for them. So she decided to send her children to an orphanage, and soon after, her children were adopted by a family. Fortunately, the children were placed with a loving family that provided them with everything they needed to begin a new chapter in their lives. With this support, Bruno, the oldest child, always held onto the hope that his biological parents would come for him and his younger sisters. He even encouraged his sisters to believe that this would happen one day. While still in prison, Raymond saw an advertisement in the newspaper for a woman named Lucienne Ulpat, who was seeking a pen pal. After his release, he found Lucienne and soon married her. Following the marriage, he became determined to reclaim his children by any means. One night, he took a gun and broke into the home of the family that was taking care of his children. The noise frightened the girls. Nadia didn't remember what her father, Raymond, looked like, and Lydia had never seen him before. They thought he might be a kidnapper and were worried that they might be in danger. Raymond successfully took the children from their foster family and placed them in his car, despite their threats to call the police. After several hours of driving, he brought the children to his home, where he introduced them to Lucienne, telling them that she was their new mother and that they would need to follow her rules. During the first years of living together, everything seemed quite stable, at least judging by family photos from the time. The family moved to a new house in a quiet neighborhood. Raymond received a cash allowance and started his own business, which focused on instant postcard printing and various office tasks. Lucienne occasionally worked in his company, but primarily handled office work. However, as time passed, the family's life began to change dramatically. The children suffered abuse from their father, Raymond, and stepmother, Lucienne. Lydia's first memory from this period was witnessing Raymond beat Bruno for playing with a neighbor's child. When Raymond and Lucienne went to work, they hired young girls to care for the children. Upon returning home, he would pressure these girls to drink alcohol with him. On one occasion, he even attempted to persuade one of the girls to have sex, but she managed to escape. The girl's father then came to the house to confront Raymond and seriously injured him. After that incident, Raymond stopped hiring nannies. Later, he bought a trailer to take his family on vacation to the beach. Once they arrived, they spent time swimming and relaxing like other vacationers. However, an unsettling event occurred. While in the water, Raymond approached his daughter, Nadia, and pressed her against him inappropriately. She struggled to escape his grip, but this only made things worse. From that point on, she became the target of Raymond's abuse. Lydia recalls one day, she heard Nadia's cries coming from the trailer. This marked the beginning of Raymond's sexual abuse of one of his daughters. After that, parents, Raymond and Lucienne, often beat and do other terrible things to their children. Bruno and Nadia stopped going to elementary school, while Lydia, who had never been to school, faced severe mistreatment. This may have been because she was not Raymond's biological daughter. A few years later, around 1971, when Lydia was over 8 years old, the bullying began to get worse. The first incident occurs when Lucienne gets angry because Lydia comes home dirty after playing outside. Her stepmother, Lucienne, put her in a bathtub filled with boiling water and bleach. She recalls that her sensitive skin began to peel and float to the surface of the water. Hearing her screams, Raymond rushed into the bathroom, pulled she out, and laid her on the bed. He attempted to treat her burns with vegetable oil, but soon realized the injuries were severe. Then, she was taken to the hospital, and doctors determined she had third-degree burns. So that Lucienne wouldn't be responsible for the incident, Raymond blamed the city government for providing too hot water. Meanwhile, Lydia was transferred to the intensive care unit and then to the burns unit at the Lion City Hospital, where she remained for several months. She also underwent several skin grafts. Raymond is always by Lydia's side, not because he was a good father, but just to keep her from sharing the incident with others. Eventually, he grew weary of the situation and declared that he would take she home to continue her treatment. Medical professionals were against this decision, but Raymond secured the support of their family doctor, who wrote a confirming that he would continue to treat Lydia. Consequently, Raymond picked Lydia up and carried her out of the burn unit. Back home, Raymond begins to take care of Lydia. He regularly changed her dressings and started to touch her inappropriately. One day, he came home with a camera, claiming he needed to take pictures for the insurance company. He first photographed Lydia, asking her to smile, and then took pictures of her private areas. He then told the girl that the family doctor had prescribed this medicine. He forced her to inhale that drug, leaving her in a semi-conscious state. Although she was aware that he was about to do something strange and painful, she was unable to resist. At that time, he was sexually assaulting she. During this time, Raymond's wife, Lucienne, did not intervene. Instead, she encouraged his behavior. For 9 years, Lydia came to see what was happening as normal. She believed her father, Raymond, loved her, which led her to think there was nothing wrong with his actions. Years later, in an interview with a French television show, Lydia explained how Raymond justified his horrific actions. He told his children that he was doing this for their well-being. He also claimed that, as their father, he had the right to do so. In 1975, the Guardot family moved to the village of Coulombe, about 40 kilometers from Paris. At their new home, Raymond and Lucienne continued to abuse their children. The teenagers still did not attend school and had very little contact with the outside world. After returning to work, Raymond managed to get permission to park his printing van at a shopping center. To attract attention, he displayed photos of Lydia's burned legs on the van. Next to the photos, there were posters announcing that Lydia's injuries were due to the negligence of the authorities, and that they had yet to compensate her. Thus, he created the image of a father, calling for public attention and justice. When he felt that the photos alone weren't enough, Raymond forced Lydia to accompany him so that people could see her scars. He used the sympathy of bystanders to sell his goods and make money. Bruno was the first to try to stop the abuse from Raymond and Lucienne. Before that, Bruno, Nadia, and Lydia tried to escape, but they were caught and punished. Despite this, Bruno, who had suffered years of physical abuse, eventually managed to escape. According to some sources, Bruno contacted the authorities to report his family's problem. However, the authorities did not take his claims seriously. Meanwhile, his younger sisters, Nadia and Lydia, continued to suffer from Raymond's behavior. As they grew older, their bodies began to change. Noticing this, Raymond bandaged his daughters' chests with elastic bandages, making it difficult for them to breathe. The bandages eventually became tattered and dirty, as he did not allow them to be removed for months. He did not want anyone other than himself to touch his daughters. Years later, Bruno returned to rescue his sister Nadia, who was now an adult. He successfully saved her, but Lydia remained in danger. Raymond confined her to the dark, damp attic, where he abused her multiple times a day. She felt betrayed by her siblings for leaving her behind. She tried to escape from home several times, but Raymond spread rumors that she was mentally ill. So every time she tried to contact the authorities, they immediately brought her back home. After another escape attempt, Raymond even chained her up to keep her from fleeing again. When Lydia turned 18, Raymond decided it was time for her to have children. He was so determined to make this happen that after each intimate encounter, he would tie her legs together to supposedly increase the chances of her getting pregnant. At 19, she became pregnant for the first time, and for almost the entire 9 months of her pregnancy, she was kept on a leash. This was to prevent her from having an abortion. She gave birth to her first child on December 8, 1982. Despite becoming a mother, Lydia continued to try to escape, but Raymond caught her repeatedly and punished her harshly. On one occasion, he locked her in the attic for 6 months. During this time, she suffered abuse from Raymond and Lucienne, who often used kitchen utensils as weapons. The only companions she had were rats. She went on to have 5 more children between 1986 and 1996. Her youngest child, a boy named Rudy, is not Raymond's but someone else's, conceived while she was trying to escape. Raymond took great pride in his children, who initially did not even know who their real mother was. Neighbors, grocery store owners, and authorities representatives all came to congratulate him on having a large family and pay their respects. Every time Lydia was ready to give birth, Raymond would take her to a hospital outside the border. There, with threats to kill her, he would force her to say that he was her husband and the father of her children. He was skilled at manipulating and she felt powerless to resist him. It all ended in 1999. Raymond, who was diabetic, began to suffer serious health issues due to his neglect of his well-being. One day, his condition deteriorated, resulting in the amputation of several toes on his left foot. After the surgery, he continued to ignore the doctor's advice, and his health condition worsened. One day, Lydia visited Raymond in the hospital and learned that he had died the night before from a pulmonary embolism. This news brought her to tears, as she seemed to forget all the pain he had caused her. Before the death of the man who had abused her for a long time, she could not understand why she felt so sad. As Lydia left the hospital, she recalled how Raymond once forced her to promise that she would end her life immediately after his death. Years of his control had deeply affected her mindset. She walked to the nearest bridge and, in a moment of despair, jumped into the river. After she fell, she lost consciousness. Then, rescuers had pulled her from the water. In that moment, she realized that the horrors of her past were finally behind her. Thus, the 28-year saga of bullying, sexual assault, and imprisonment ended. She was free at last. After Lydia was released, she faced many challenges. As an illiterate and unemployed young woman, she needed to rebuild her life. She also had to reconnect with her children, who had been raised by Raymond and Lucienne without any contact with her. Fortunately, after years of neglecting the issue, the authorities began to support her. Initially, she was allowed to stay in the house where she had been held captive, although she was too afraid to go into the attic, the site of her abuse. Lydia's stepmother, Lucienne, who was 68 at the time, went to trial in 2007. She received a 3-year suspended sentence for failing to stop the crimes committed by Raymond. In 2008, this sentence was appealed and increased to 4 years probation. Lydia bravely shared her story with everyone. Despite still being illiterate, she collaborated with journalists and writer Jean-Michel Radem to publish a book about her difficult journey to freedom. In her book, Lydia criticized many government agencies. According to her, during the days when she escaped, they made her fall back into a bad situation without trying to understand the situation. She was especially critical of her stepmother, Lucienne, who not only ignored her suffering, but also actively participated in the physical abuse. She also criticized Bruno, Nadia, and medical workers who treated her injuries from burns, bruises, and cuts. She claims that medical staff ignored the obvious signs of her mistreatment and chose to remain uninvolved. Additionally, she criticizes her neighbors for not contacting any social services despite hearing the daily screams of children. Finally, Lydia expressed her disappointment with the French justice system for going easy on Lucienne. After publishing her book, the public became aware of the horrors she endured. Though some people advised her against sharing her story, she firmly believes that victims of such crimes should share their experiences, as it may help protect others. After gaining her freedom, Lydia met Sylvain Skurla. He seemed to come into her life to help heal her from the pain she had suffered. Shortly after they met, they got married and had 2 children. She expressed that she found hope in her husband and began to embrace life again. She participated in several media interviews and documentaries about her experiences, with Sylvain always by her side. However, the indelible traces of her time in captivity still remained in her heart. The scars on her body were a reminder of her past and the struggles she had gone through. With the help of a lawyer, Lydia appealed to the Judicial Commission for compensation. In her appeal, she detailed the torture and abuse she endured from Raymond and Lucienne, as well as her lack of access to education, which hindered her ability to find work. Additionally, she was not registered in the Social Security system because she could not write, preventing her from completing necessary forms. She also mentioned that burns she suffered as a child resulted in a degree of disability. Therefore, it was essential for Lydia to achieve several goals. First, to have her status as a victim recognized. Second, to receive financial assistance from the state to buy a home, ensuring she would never return to the place where she was tortured. On November 16, 2009, the Victims' Compensation Commission awarded Lydia over $100,000 in compensation. Her children, whom she had with Raymond, also received financial support. It was reported that they all found stable jobs, rebuilt their lives, and started their own families. Now, at 61 years old, Lydia has had a long and challenging journey to achieve a happy life. She needed specialized treatment for her emotional and physical scars for many years. However, with Sylvain's support, she was able to begin again. Despite everything she has gone through, she remains a strong and cheerful woman. Later, Lydia re-established communication with Bruno and Nadia. However, she admits that she still feels anger towards Bruno for not taking her with him.